Who wants to build a PTO app? An application that keeps track of all the pay time off that employees can use to see how many hours have been allotted to them. I could imagine that in a PTO application scenario at a company, perhaps the executives or people that have been around 10, 15 years. That's who I was looking for. There he is. There he
Hello.
is.
Sorry about that,
I
guys.
can't hear you at all. It sounds like your mic's two doors down.
Yeah, there we go. Now we're here.
But
Ah,
yeah, so maybe executives or people who have been around 10 years, perhaps they've got more vacation days than me just being an entry level guy. So, you know what? I'm going to make us smaller and focus on this Word document. And I was working with this great client this week, and he wanted to see how you would build a PTO application in Power Apps. And this individual actually has a YouTube channel. He's really good with C Sharp and the .NET platform, and dare I say Blazor. And I almost felt a challenge. Is this low code, no code platform really as good as Microsoft markets to be? Maybe as good as what I believe it to be. And so let's go over the requirements. Okay. Now, we just had a workshop just yesterday, didn't we, Kurt?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we had some people sign up for that workshop. And what we did is we went strictly off these requirements that the client gave me. Okay. So the client's using SQL Server and he wanted me to use Dataverse. Okay. So that's what we did. This is all the schema details, and let's see if I can make this show tabs only, so I get a little bit more space here. I can zoom in here and maybe even get rid of that heading. Okay, so these are the tables, just basic 3 tables. Now we've got columns and stuff. So we actually created an ERD diagram, which I'll bring up. So we'll take a more look at that. But here are the user stories. This is pretty much a one-screen application. We want to start off small. When you start a project, I'd always recommend starting with what's referred to in the industry as an MVP, minimal viable product. Allows you to focus on something small, but yet essential for the application, for the purposes of the application. You can get it out there. You can get your customers, clients, the users start looking at it, poking at it, giving you feedback, maybe even identifying any bugs that are there. A really bad scenario would be planning this huge system, taking months to build it, and then you put it out there, and there's like, oh, this isn't, this is all messed up, But if you continuously deploy and put out little feature by feature, perhaps screen by screen, or user story by user story. Okay. So now that I've shown that, I'm going to move that up here. Okay. So this is the ERD diagram that we created. Now, this PTO person was not included in the requirements, but we discussed how we might want to use a table like this that would have the user's name, email, photo. Now, you might think to yourself, well, that's all in Azure AD, or now it's called Intra. And it is. But within Power Apps, you get these 4 different items here. Their full name, their email address, their photo, and their Intra ID, which is a GUID, a unique identifier. And what's nice about this is, in Power Apps, we have a connector called the Office 365 Users Connector. It allows us to get all the Azure AD or Intra data, so it's out there. But there are scenarios where if you have a table like this, and perhaps all your, of course, there would only be one table like this in your Dataverse database, and you could have many Power Apps applications that might use it. So you don't have to create one of these for every single app that you create, of course. But we went pretty thoroughly into that of why you might want to use that. But we still omitted that in the workshop because I wanted to stick to the client's requirements. When you get very clear requirements, it's almost like sacred. Listen, if you got a client and they give you requirements, that's sacred. Don't get all fancy. Now, if you stay within those requirements, or you just maybe shoot them an email and say, "Hey, I had an idea for the screen," and then if they give you the blessing, then good. But this was sort of a challenge, and I wanted pretty much the requirements to be exactly the same between the client doing this in C sharp, Blazor, and what we're doing here on the Power Platform. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, Darren, that that's a pretty good hook though, putting that PTO person in there.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't hurt the requirements any. It can just stand off to the side there if they choose they want to use it or not, if they not want to. But oftentimes, and I guess I just kind of want to put out there the biggest reason why you want to do that, because there's some people that may not understand that, is that if you're dealing with a connector, you're dealing with a 365 connector. And so if you've got a lot of people in there, you're talking about a lot of round trips out there to go and grab data if you're going to go grab 500, 600 of them at a time. Whereas if you just go and grab those ones one time, put them in your collection, it's going to be much faster. If you wanted to do it that way. So I thought it was a pretty good little hook that you got in there for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the scenario, you're right on, Kurt. Thank you for bringing that up. So if you've got a gallery, which is a repeater control, whatever you put in that first row of the gallery is going to be repeated. And that top row is called the template, the gallery template. And let's say we put some labels in there and we start doing lookups and some filters, and we're talking to Azure AD. Well, we could use that Office 365 users connector and be calling things, and these calls could take maybe a half a second. You got 500 employees in that gallery. You could do the math right there. You're going to make your application sluggish. And if you recall from yesterday, now that you guys have seen this, let's go. Well, I can go over and show you the tables here. We have, and I sort of like this when you prefix your tables with something, you can easily see all of the tables for that application. Okay. Because if I don't have that, you'll see I've got a lot of tables that I've created as I've created videos for you guys. If I go over to recommended, there's a lot more that are created by default in the Dataverse database. And you click on all, there's even more. Might I even say hundreds of tables. And I don't really care for that. My favorite data source, guys, is SQL Server. I know a lot about SQL Server. I can do so many things with SQL Server. I could call store procedures. I can utilize views to do my joins. It's really powerful. Now, why would you ever use Dataverse then if SQL Server has all these upsides? Well, there's fewer API calls, layers of API calls with Dataverse. It's been designed for the Power Platform. Might I say it's the fastest data source to use within a Power App or the Power Platform. Now, a Dataverse database is actually a SQL Server database. You can actually connect to it with Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. And that is a free download. If you do a search for SSMS download, you'll find it. So I see people coming in the chat. Guys, good morning. I see Patty. I see Data's King or Kendall. Kendall is from Albany, Georgia, and Patty's from Texas, and Frode is from Norway. It's so cool to connect to you guys, around the world.
Yeah, I think the Dataverse is also maybe better suited for your, they've got this thing they promote out there called the citizen developer, this,
yeah,
the mere mortal developer, right? And maybe it's more suited for that because it's got some training wheels set up on there. Like you said, it's SQL Server in the background, but it's got some stuff on top of it to make it easier. And I do love the lookup feature. where you do, instead of having your foreign key, you have a
Mhm.
lookup field, and that lookup field, you're when you access that lookup field, you are actually in the foreign keys table now. You have access to that entire record, you know. Um, so that's pretty cool. So it jumps you back over to the primary data source, the primary
It does.
table, and it gives you access to that entire one side. And when you're over there working with the many side of the table, oftentimes you wish you had that. You wish you didn't have to keep going back over there looking at it all the time and gathering different fields, but you have the entire record right alongside with you. I love that feature about Dataverse. Of course,
Yeah.
it kind of helps you be lazy too, but
Yeah, I really do too. Um, and I believe, um, if I remember right, when I was using, I'm sort of losing touch with my roots, which is the .NET platform, um, and we do have Ron on, who actually, has a background with .NET and C Sharp. Um,
yeah. Good morning,
so
Ron.
yeah, good morning.
Morning, everyone.
um, so there is a loading. So over here in the app, so this is what we did yesterday in the workshop. And if you guys want to get at the replay to that, there's links down in the description that you'll find for if you want to come in on our next workshop next Friday. I believe what we're going to do is help you guys plan and design whatever project that you're working on or about to work on. So in one of these things, if you look at this, the data source for this gallery, we're looking at the entry table. Now I called it col entries because I loaded up into a collection so we could work with it much more easily. Okay. And what we have, okay, on the entries table, if I click on this label here, so we're in the entry table and we go over to this PTO reason ID. Now that is a lookup column, and that is the way to create and establish relationships between your tables. Okay. And then once I did that, okay, I'm going to cut that, hit a dot. I can get at all the data from from that other table.
Yeah. That actually demonstrates what I was trying to explain. Doing a much better job by the way you are. But isn't that great though?
I love it. I love it. Okay, guys. Well, let's just sort of just stay right here, and we got a lot of hellos from all over the place. And I'm going to be watching the comments. I would love for Ron to bring in any feedback if he thinks this would be a good PTO application. Any thoughts from anyone at this point before we start adding on to this? Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, Kurt, help me think of some
Okay.
new features. Would you like to add this new table here and update our schema?
That would be one thing we could do.
Yeah.
Ron, do you think there's anything that we could add to it that would go beyond what we've done so far? That would be cool.
No, and I don't want to interrupt or disrupt y'all's cadence or flow to it. Like we've talked about before, as head of an IT for 1,000-person company, my interest is more in cost and governance. But I definitely like this being an initial use case to check out the technology. My broader concerns probably more for a different session as opposed to figuring out how to build this with your audience.
Sure.
Okay. Well,
Sure.
I appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
Kurt,
were you about to say something?
No, I was agreeing that that governance issue, that's something that we really probably should be talking about. It's awful dry to do a live stream on governance though, isn't it? But it's such an important thing, especially if you're in Ron's position.
If you guys ever want to have a session to discuss those with the group, I would definitely join that for an international roundtable with your audience.
We should do that.
Absolutely. So actually, Kurt, do you remember this last Thursday with the help of Jason? And actually Jason's on. I'm going to bring on Jason here if you guys don't. Okay, well, I can fit everybody. Just to let you all know, we do have a private chat. So, Ron, like you were saying, well, I don't want to interrupt your flow here. There's a little private chat at the bottom that you can type whatever you want to, and I can sort of keep an eye on that, and I can address any of those things there. So, Jason is one of our accelerator students, and Jason, I don't want you to feel obligated to say anything if you don't want to, but I would love for you to say something if you have something to share. So Jason has a good background in governance. He is the governor of the Power Platform in his organization, as I understand it, and he has been sharing a lot of the research and the knowledge on Thursdays at noon in our accelerator program. In the accelerator, we got 4 different weekly live group calls. And he's been gracious to share with us a lot of these things. In fact, we do have an outline that I can share with you guys. So let me bring that over here and show it with you guys. Of course, this is a little bit off the main topic, but I just wanted to show you guys what we have going on. So we're going to be going. We went over pretty much the first level of bullet points here this last Thursday. And then we'll be going over these other topics later on. So we're going to be covering the Center of Excellence, which I'm very excited about. I'd sort of like to have a Center of Excellence session one Saturday morning on this stuff. But so we'll be covering the importing, exporting, doing solutions, also ALM and Azure pipelines and all that type of stuff. So, so we got quite a bit planned for the upcoming week. So thought I'd share.
Ron, as Darren was going through his outline there, I was just thinking, wouldn't it be great if you could make a bulleted list of some of the topics that you think that you would really like to break down and cover, because maybe we could actually make a session that would even be addressing some of your issues, because I bet you're not the only one. Bet you're not the only one.
I'd create an outline for a session if there were enough people that wanted to come together and talk on the cost and governance and related issues.
I think it'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great if we could do that.
We could have like a round table or a workshop, whatever you guys want. I'm all about doing this type of stuff. So,
and see, it kind of helps. Go ahead, Ron.
I'll create it and forward it to you guys, and if it's fodder for you, set it up, invite me, and I'll be happy to join.
Right. Great. It really helps. I think it would help Darren and I get out of our tunnel vision line of thinking, because we come from a developer's aspect. So having somebody like you with your experience and with your issues that you got to deal with, that really would help us get outside of ours and to kind of think outside that realm a little bit. And it's only going to help us, so that's exciting.
Yeah. Very good. Excited about it.
Darren, back to your point with the, where do we want to go with this?
Mm-hmm.
I think one, everybody loves dashboards, and a lot of people don't even know what a dashboard is, but they want a dashboard, So that would be one thing that we could do with this, is have like a statistical type thing. Like we could see, I would like to see a search by year, like say Snuffy Smith, employee Snuffy Smith's been there for 17 years. And I want to see what his stuff is, what his history has been. So maybe we could do something like that with it. Maybe we could do a percentage. We could keep track of percentages with it, and maybe we can even throw a chart in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I see a good turnout in this live stream, and I see a lot of good views, that tells me people are interested in it. This could be a several part series as we build onto it. We have other series that we've started, and like we have an onboarding application that we started. I think we have like 10 videos, 10 live streams on that topic. But I love building apps on these live streams, like, where the rubber meets the road, the practicalities of creating applications. But there are times when you're brought on as a Power Apps expert, like I've been brought in before, and sometimes I get asked all kinds of questions that don't directly relate to building Canvas apps and Power Apps, and then I end up researching it and finding some good stuff that are more on the side of the governance. So, guys, I would challenge you and encourage you to become well-rounded on the Power Platform and not to have those proverbial blinders on. So, okay. And then Kendall says dashboards and Power BI question mark. I'm hoping. Well, guys, we did have a live stream just this week. I think it was on Wednesday here on the channel over the basics of Power BI. And we had her name was Erin, and she's great, and she's agreed to do multiple sessions with us. So that might be a regular thing here on the channel. All right. So I'd really like to add this table in here because one of the things I want to do, something that I should have done, is, and it was actually in the requirements, and I sort of feel bad I didn't bring it in here, but it's very easy to add. Okay, if you look at the screen here, we've got perhaps the employee name there at the top, and we have the year. Okay, so now I have a lot of dynamic things going on the screen, but I set this interface up, and so I'll be dynamic. I move the one gallery, then everything moves along with it. I like to do that. So I'm going to add in a label. I'll show you how easy that is to implement here. Did I get one? Nope. Let's try that again. Text label. There we go. And let's make this, the font needs to be much larger. Let's say 24 or 28. And then I'm going to use this gallery to reference for the width. Okay, so we've got that dot width. And, I might give it a nice gray background. I think I use, that's almost too dark. Let's use something a little bigger. And for the text, we'll go in here and we'll reference the user function dot full name. Okay. And for the X here, I will make that align with the gallery's X. Okay. So we can do that. We'll probably need a little bit more padding, maybe like 15, make it look right. So that was part of that. Now, what I'd sort of like if a super user or an app admin, a manager, they could come into this screen and it detects if they're a manager, if they should have access. This label becomes a drop-down list, and they can select whatever employee to see these details, and maybe even purge. It's like, oh nope, this is denied. That type of thing, which sort of adds this type of workflow. Like, hey, I'd like to take my vacation next week, and I'm going to be on a 14-day cruise, so it's going to span 2 weeks, and we might see that come up here. I'm like, well, I take a week, but the week after that, we were going to go to production on an application. So please don't take that second week or something like that. So these are the things that I'm thinking of. Perhaps we should add. Okay, let's go into the Dataverse and add this table here. Okay, and right now what we have for the person ID, I believe we had to make this single line of text for these two. And what we could do is actually redo those to be a proper relationship. So I'm going to put this up here on this screen so I can look at it as I'm building the tables. So I will add a new table. And I always go down here to the advanced properties. Here's something. Check this out. How about an email notification to the manager when a user submits a request time off? Absolutely. I like that. So perhaps we could actually add that today. Let's see how things go. I'm a little sometimes over optimistic on all the things that I can cover within an hour or two. Do you agree with that, Kurt?
I plead the fifth on that.
Okay, so we're creating a new table, and as we discussed yesterday, Dataverse is always going to try to create a name field, and I recommend you just leave it as is, sort of like in SharePoint. It always creates a title. Well, I would just leave it as is and put something meaningful in there, as if that the list of records would be in a drop-down list, and that's pretty much what you would want to use that for. And you just always know there's always every table is going to have a name, and that'll be what's used for drop-down lists. Okay. And I sort of agree with this. I discussed this yesterday. For like, if I'm going to do vacation and I'm going to ask for 14 days off, is the way that it sits now. We just go in here and we just pick a date. It would be nice to say, okay, I'm gonna take off from here to there, and have a start date, end date, that type of stuff. And also something we discussed yesterday is, hey, what about if I'm sick for just half the day? I wake up, I go to work, I'm working, and around 11, I'm like, it's time for lunch, but I just need to lay down. I don't feel well, So instead of days, we could have half days or hours or something like that, And then Data's King says or asks, how about data validation? If a user tries to make more leave than they have available. Well, these are great ideas, guys. Keep them coming.
What we could do, because you like and I kind of like it too, the one day, one record type scenario. 1 day, one record, one reason, right?
Okay.
You could, if a person puts in a date range, you could go ahead and just run a sequence loop on that and do a record for each day that they put in. So like if you put a week in, you could make 7 records like that. That would be a sick way of doing it. Yeah.
That's true. I like that. Because as it sits right now, I believe I did.
You got to count. Yeah, you done count.
Yeah, we did a count.
Yep.
So every record was going to end up being, where did I do that, Kurt? The Taken, I think.
I'm not sure. I can't remember.
I went to the entries, and I knew every record in the entries table was going to be 1 day.
Yeah.
And so for every one, now this entry is that it's just for the current year. Oh, that's another thing. I want to have a drop down list for the years, So it's December. I want to go forward a year, and in January, a few weeks ahead, and ask for stuff off. So it's not always the current year.
And see, I kind of like the way you're designed. I didn't like it at first because I thought, man, that's going to get big really fast. But then I started thinking about it. It's so much easier to roll up that way. If you need to do a roll up, when I say roll up, I mean like condense it down. Like, let's say I just want to count how many I've got, and maybe I want to put that into a reporting table. But to me, when you're working with data, the more granular you can get with the data, the better off you're going to be in the end, because you can always summarize, count rows like you're doing right there. You can always summarize, but if you're going to have to count a day range, you might have to do some programming within that, So if I was a Power BI person, I think I would rather be working with the granular record level, 1 record, 1 reason, 1 day,
Okay.
And if Snuffy Smith takes 2 weeks off and decides to come back 3 days early, well, it's a lot easier to deal with that then, right?
That's true. That's true. And another thought I had for a day, that would be an entry here. We could add another field there of like how many hours in that day are you using, so we could sort of, and
or you could just keep that at a fractional level and say, look, we're going to work with quarter days. You can work with a quarter day, half day.
Put a decimal value in there.
Yeah.
1 would be a full day, and absolutely love these ideas, guys.
And then you could actually put a 0.25 in a drop down list. let's say you want to give them, like a whole day, or you want to do a quarter or a half,
Mm-hmm.
you can do something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I got a field for email. Add that. How do we look like? I'm trying to allow you guys to see more stuff at once. Okay, so we got an email. We're gonna add a photo, and we're gonna make that either a file or a binary or something. SharePoint, I deal with photos a little differently. We can actually use a document library to sort the photos. I want to go in here and go to file.
Yeah.
And yeah, be having us at the bottom isn't going to work. Okay, so we got either a file or an image, and we're going to pick image. And you can go in advanced options. If you're to open up this database with SQL Server Management Studio, you'll see the CR833 as the table names, the column names, all that type of stuff. All right, there's the photo. I'm gonna hit save.
Did you need to do the maximum character count? Did you need to increase that for a photo? I think the maximum character count was 100 on there. You need to make that a little bigger.
Oh, really? Let's go back in there real quick.
I think so. I just looked at it real quick as you were going down there.
Yeah.
I try to keep up. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, 100.
Yeah,
Now, why do we have a character count for a photo? I hope that's not 100 bytes. I guess we'll find out here in a moment when we try to put a photo in there, right?
Okay.
So that will be a learning experience. So we'll leave it at 100 and see if it gets in the way. So let's go add our intra ID. Okay. And I wish I could make this the primary key for this table, because this I sort of want, it's going to be using a GUID as a foreign key all over the place. Like, might as well just use the intra ID GUID for that. But something I'm going to show you guys for the data type, there is no, when you have a GUID, both in SQL Server and Dataverse, the data type for that column is called unique identifier. And what you notice is that you don't have any type of unique identifier here. Somebody from yesterday was saying, oh, well, that's auto number. And we sort of explored that, and it really wasn't.
No.
And I didn't see a way to do that. I haven't had a time to research this to see if it's just impossible. But it definitely knows about unique identifiers, because for every table, it creates a column by the same name as the table that has that unique identifier in it. And that's truly the primary key for that table and what's used. Okay. So Kurt, as I'm doing this, would you mind, I'm going to bring up these comments and maybe respond to this,
Sure.
some of these as I'm doing this.
So Eric Christie asked, could you also have a calendar screen that shows stat holidays schedules? So when you say stat holidays, I'm thinking you're meaning like for the business holidays, right? Beyond just the regular ones, maybe. So that's something I thought would be really great to make. If I was going to make a calendar control, I would have had the ability to put in our own holidays with that, to list special days within that, or appointments, things like that. I think that that might actually be something that we'd have to create, maybe from a gallery or something. Maybe we could create a calendar for something like that, yeah, be kind of a cool exercise anyway. Data is king. You can put in the time that the user wants to leave. If it's within a day, have them select the start and end time and calculate the hours. Yep, we could do that too. That's not a bad idea. Eric Christie, I had a holiday table that automatically populated holidays whenever there was a week that had a holiday. Okay. So you're talking about that kind of thing. And we certainly could do something like that. Engineer your life. I love that. Engineer your life. Well, I need that. Phew. I need a life engineer. Maybe add the ability to see balance, including requested and approved, to facilitate PTO planning for staff. Also, future versions could maybe have accrual features added. Absolutely. Those are great.
Yeah.
Nodak Hunter. How you doing, Nodak Hunter? We've seen you around here for a while, quite a bit. That's pretty cool. If you select days off in a range, it takes weekends into account. When the user selects a date range, if the user could remove the normal days off, right? Yeah, that's true. So if you did a date range, you got to make sure that there's no weekends in there, right? Andrew Hess, my SP questions. Morning, Darren.
SharePoint.
Yeah.
So guys, I'm going to plug this guy. He's got an amazing channel. He's been out there for a lot longer than I've been. So check his channel out. He called his channel My SharePoint Questions. Andrew, I wish I had sent you the link to this. I'd love to have you on here. Let's go. Okay, so I need to explain what I'm doing here. So we've created a table, and we brought it in PTO people. Okay, and I add a little button, which we'll eventually get rid of. But patch is a function that allows us to add, edit, update records within your data source. And the first parameter is the data source. So I'm going to say PTO people. Okay. Now, what we're going to do here, the second record, I'm sorry, the second argument or the second parameter is the record that you want to patch. Yeah. Now, if you've got if you want to do an insert or an add to the table, you need to use a function called defaults. It knows the schema. So if you have some default values set up, it's going to create a new record that you can work with. And whenever you patch it, the data source says, "Oh, this was created with a defaults. It's a fresh new record." Okay, so I'm going to say PTO people.
I just want to make sure people understand when you say defaults, that default function is going to put the default values, whatever you had in that schema for the default values, it will automatically put all those in there. And then it will leave blank anything that you don't address, right? So you can still just update one field if you want to within that defaults when you're doing it. So I'll add a record with that one field that you addressed, and then all the other default values will be in there.
Yeah, I like that.
Now, another cool thing about defaults is you can actually put defaults into a variable and carry that around and fill that up and populate that variable as you want, and then update your record with that default record.
Absolutely. I like that.
Yeah.
I like to use default. Sometimes people will put a record into a variable, which is fine. And then like for a new record, they'll use the blank function, and that sort of messes with Power Apps. Well, blank, that's sort of like a different data type.
Yeah.
So you might end up having some weird bug. Don't use blank function to reference a record or a blank record. Use that defaults to get it.
I learned from the burn on that too. And you kind of helped me with that because I learned something about that blank is really made for a string. And so sometimes if you're testing for a record to be blank, it's going to keep the schema in there. It might be a blank record, but it's going to have the schema in that. And at the string level, it's not blank, right? It's not blank. So I've gotten burned on that. So you taught me in always test for a blank value in the record, like that would be, like, for instance, name. We know that name is probably going to be a requirement in the Dataverse, the field. So you test to see if that name is blank. That name field is blank, not the record. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But don't listen to us. You're going to have to learn from the burn. Everybody's got to learn from the burn, right?
Experience is what you get when you don't get what you want.
Yep.
So something I want to say, Kurt, before you read this next comment is that, and I'll make sure your face isn't blocked out by the comment. Here within, I wanted to talk a little bit about. I don't want to go on too much about it, But PPC is an offering that we have. It's called Personal Pocket Coaching. You'll get a bite-sized video for every day of the year or every day of the month. And here just recently, we did a series. It's been recorded. I just need to edit it. It's called the Kurt Pillars on, what do we call that, for life or just for programming?
Maybe it was for programming. Yeah, I think
Learn from the Burn is one of them. But guys, Kurt here was my mentor, and he made quite an impression on me. He helped me get my first job, and there were so many things. I started making a list of all these Kurt-isms. So we've got a lot of videos that came out of that, that will be pocket sized or bite sized. So be looking for that. If you guys want to know more about the pocket coaching, if you go over to my school environment, I should probably share the link just so you guys have that. And there are probably links below in the video description. It is reasonably priced, so you might want to check that out.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say about it?
Yeah, I just really quick, because you guys probably hear me talk about this PPC. For those of you guys have been hearing me say this often, I know that there's some people out there right now that have PPC, that have subscribed to PPC, and maybe you guys could kind of put your input out there in the comments, because then it doesn't sound, because I've got a couple things that are just really big to me about this PPC that I like to share. The first thing is that we get concise and to the point quickly. Well, as quickly as I can. I can never do that quick, but a lot of times with the videos, we talk quite a bit about things, and with the PPC, we actually get right to the point as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And we also cover some pretty cool topics like the bouncing ball. Data is King just says, I'm interested in Kurt's bouncing ball app. We talk about the bouncing ball. Somebody brought up ASCII values, and I thought, just recently, in fact, I'm getting ready to publish those videos here pretty quickly. But we're actually dealing with some encryption and decryption, and actually doing a login screen that could be a backup to the actual, like, let's say maybe you're working with a kiosk, and you've got everybody's got one central login maybe. And so now you can actually have a login within a login, so that your Power App could actually have a backup screen or maybe an admin screen, So I've got some stuff that we're working with that, but we do some really cool topics in here where we just go out there and explore, and we get right to the point on how to do something. So it's pretty cool. That's number one. And then number two, it builds your reference. When you're a programmer, it's all about knowing, because if I don't do a certain thing, maybe once a year, I gotta go look up how to do it. And I just hate going through the University of Google and trying to find a good video to watch. So I'll already have that right here. So you're building your reference with this PPC, and you're getting really good, concise examples. So, and there's so much I could talk about that. But Darren,
so talking about reference, guys, here in the community, you do a search. I've got all the content indexed, so you'll find all the available content based on that. And we have over here, we got Data is King talking about, no, it was actually a comment on that sequence. And you see all these posts of people talking about that. So I'd encourage you guys to take part in that. Even if it's just being in the community. And by the way, I do have a Power Apps crash course I offer for free there. I used to charge for that, but it's completely free. And we have an app in a day module. We got a module on the 10 things I feel that you've got to know before building your first Power Apps. That's in there as well. So, okay, I'd like to go over. So we're done with this patch statement. Okay, so the user function for the longest time only had 3 properties that we could get at. Okay, full name, email, and image, the first 3. But then they added the intra object ID, which I'm very thankful for working on this project, because I needed that, and I didn't want to have to use some connectors and APIs. So the third parameter of the patch allows us to name off the columns and also the values we want to put or update into those columns. Okay. And what I'd like to do, so if I just run this and click on this button here, The length must be between 0 and 100. Well, Kurt, I think you were right. Kurt, you're not always right, but when you're right, you're really right.
Darren is such a he really helps me with postponing gratification. That's the keys to success is postponing gratification.
Really?
And remember, people pay big money for this.
I'm sorry, I had to throw that in there. Go ahead, Kurt.
So oftentimes, he'll sit there and he'll go, yeah, Kurt, yeah, Kurt. And then about a week later, it'll be, oh, there it is. It's like, yep. Sometimes you just got to wait for it, But I have this insatiable need to be right. And Darren always helps me with that. Thank you, Darren.
So I wanted to put tons of 9s in here to see how high, because it will illustrate it. I wish it would just display it like, hey, the maximum, don't even try to do anything more than 4,000. Okay. So I'm going to put 4,000. And I've used the image column type before. I didn't have that issue. So we'll see what's going on here. If I hit save. Now, whenever you update your database schema, it doesn't matter what data source you're using, SharePoint, Dataverse, SQL Server. Don't think of using Excel as a data source, please, guys. You're barking up the wrong tree. Now, you can import from Excel, but don't use Excel as a data source. You'll be the only person that can use it, or whoever gets in there first. So I'm gonna, in order for Power Apps to realize that something's changed, you go in here and PTO people, and you want to do a refresh here. Okay, since the schema has changed. I'm going to save and run and click on that button again. And okay, so it still doesn't like that.
So maybe we need to do your JSON patch with that.
Yeah,
might have to try that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I had just picked file. And maybe what maybe they changed it so that really what you could do is just put it in SVG, which is really small. It's a simple vector type of an image. Okay, so look at what I did. So that's what was going on. I was almost positive I said picture photo. You guys remember that, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that photo. I feel a little bit like a doofus or I don't know. So I'm going to click on the plus again. And let's try this again. Photo. I'm going to go down to file, image, the primary image. Yeah. So if you want an image and maybe you had like a combo box, and you wanted this to be used as the default image, this will be like perhaps a headshot. Okay.
There you go.
Look at this. Now we've got.
Can that just pull the one out of Entra?
Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
Would you say it's going to pull it out of what?
Out of Entra.
Entra.
It pulls that. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it will. And I'm wondering about the size here. So this is 10 megabytes. And I would say that it needs to be. We don't want to give them 100 megabytes, then do use a mirrorless full frame camera and take a long time for that thing to come over. And if I'm not mistaken, Kurt, I think we actually can get at like a thumbnail image.
I know we can SharePoint. I'm not sure. I don't know if I've tried that in Dataverse. If I have, I can't remember. Sometimes I work with so many different data sources at the same time. I can't remember which one I was written in. I know that in SharePoint, we actually could convert, but you know what? Now that you were talking about, I think you can go into just a thumbnail.
Okay. We're going to find out. Oh, I see champagne bubbles going across.
You say dot, like photo dot. I think there's a.
Okay.
Yep. I think there's an enumerated type. Sorry, Darren. Go ahead.
Yeah. So let's check that out. Exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to bring in an image control. Okay. And what I want to do is I'm going to read it back from the database. So I'm going to do a lookup. So if you need to get just one record, lookup is the function that you need. Yeah.
So Carl, we got a couple comments while you're doing that, Darren.
Okay.
Carl
Yeah. Let's bring them up here.
Yeah. Well, let's go back. One Andrew Hess says, I'm going to join one of your light Saturday mornings very soon. Thanks for the invite. We're going to hold you to that, Andrew. Come on, get on here.
Oh, I got a response from Andrew on that. All right, back to Carl.
And then Carl says, I just want to share something. I got something blocking that. Okay, something I've been working with law firms where, at least here in Chile, data governance is a big problem. And they love my solutions with Power App. Always watch your streamings. Oh, well, you know what? We were just, I don't know if you were here earlier, but we were talking about that with Ron about maybe doing a kind of like a roundtable discussion out here on a live stream about governance. I think I would definitely love to see you come on here with us, and we can talk about some of these solutions that you've got. And maybe Ron has a chance to talk about some of his exact problems that he's got to deal with. I think it'd be great. Hopefully,
I'll definitely. I will. Like I said, for those who don't know, I'm head of IT for a 1,000-person company, and governance and cost are my things. And yeah, we touched on this earlier. I would definitely join that roundtable.
Okay. Yeah. And hopefully we'll put some word out, and maybe we can get a lot of people that are in your position together, and we can come up with something. And if we've got some problems that are unsolvable, maybe that's another solution to bring to people, like maybe to Microsoft or whoever. Hey, we got to fix this, right? So then we have Data's King. He says he's interested in the bouncing ball app, as many people are. That is Patty will vouch for me on that one. That's been the bane of her existence. And Jason.
Sorry, what is the bouncing ball app?
So in the accelerator program in lab 2, I threw just a little part in there, said, hey, let's just see if these guys can do a bouncing ball. And you're basically animating a bouncing ball to go around the screen and hit the walls and bounce off the walls. And that thing has been just driving everybody crazy how to do it. So I've done a couple hint videos on it. I've got the bouncing ball animation right there in PPC just to show people how to do a little bit of it, But it's how to do simple animation. You can actually do games and animation in Power Apps if you wanted to, So, and the whole purpose of that is so that people can, you think, well, I'm interested in doing business apps, reading records, writing records, and processing data. But if you can control, it's all about, when you're a programmer, it's about controlling your program. It's about being in control. And if you can control a bouncing ball, then you have control over your program. And we're talking about, relative positioning. We're talking about responsiveness and just the ability to do mathematical equations in line in a very concise, slick way, right? And so that's what that bouncing ball does. It's kind of like the Mr. Miyagi and Karate Kid, wax on, wax off. Everybody wants to go out there and do this crazy, great stuff. And I say, hey, let's just start with the bouncing ball. And it's great because even though Patty and Jason, I can vouch for both of them, they have their complaints about that bouncing ball, but it has really made them better programmers. It really has. I've watched it right before my eyes.
All the dynamic stuff that I actually built into this app. Everything is based on the width and the placement of the gallery, and everything is dynamic. I do a lot of dynamic moving things around, and I learned all that from you, Kurt. And it's all about the bouncing ball. That was, I think, was it lab 2 or lab 3 over 25 years ago in a VB6 class, right? Yep. Something was animated. We had rocket ships going on with random number generations and
rocket race. We had the rocket race. Yep. We had the great rocket race.
Well, we've got some good comments in the private chat too. So Jason, who I would refer to as my resident governance expert, okay, says count me in for the roundtable, okay. And then Joshua, who was at our workshop yesterday, says wax on, wax off, Kurtism. I like it.
Yeah, and Darren, I don't know if, well, I was going to say, I don't know if this is a time to mention it, but since I'm mentioning it, I guess it is. For those who don't know that, we talked about that conference, the third annual Microsoft Power Platform Conference in Vegas in September. I was just going to mention I just signed up for it this week. So
Okay.
if any in your audience are there, say hi to me. We got a little community going here.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love to do a meetup. And every time I see a conference coming up on Power Apps, Power Platform, even the M365, and I believe that Daniel Christian signed us up as co-presenters in the one coming up. Now, I don't know. I need to confirm with him if that's a go or not, but it's here in Orlando. But yeah, I would love to go to all these conferences. I would love that, and love to do meetups, and I met a few of my accelerator students when they come into Orlando. Of course, everybody vacations here in Orlando, so it's sort of a cool place. But I've never been to Vegas, so I would really like to go to that. That would be very cool.
Okay, so I'm seeing so Microsoft puts on several of these around. I wasn't sure if there was like the one big annual one in Vegas or if they did these all over, but I'm looking at Andrew's comment about the Microsoft one in Orlando. So I guess they do these all around.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna do Power Platform Conference 2024. Maybe I could get a listing of all of them that are coming up. And
I'd like to attend one or at least have our roundtable on governance well before fall, because I need to make some executive decisions at my company as far as if and how, and probably not more the if, but more the how we're going to begin to adopt this technology. And I've got some due diligence to do.
yeah, there's a guy I do some advertising on LinkedIn to let people know that I'm out here and doing Power Apps content, and my automations messaged a guy that works at Microsoft. Not only does he work for Microsoft, he said, "Well, Darren, I'm very well versed with Power Apps. I was actually the guy who has created all the certification exams for all the Power Platform exams." I'm like, "Oh wow, okay." And now I want to kind of like, "Hey, can I have you on as a guest?" That would be a great guy to ask about governance.
Oh,
If
it
I
would
could
be
pull him on
such
a
a
live
great
stream.
God. Can you imagine getting an hour with this guy? I just love the fact that how he responded to you in that. He
Yeah.
could have been it just seemed like had a real humble spirit, and because he could have just been, you know who I am? Do you realize who you're talking to here? But no, he was amazing, and that was my snafu. I'm the one that's messing up. I'm like, all these people have been, I looked at all these people that click his button, and I said, hey,
Yeah.
I reach out, hey, are you trying to learn Power Apps? Are you trying to learn this stuff? And here I am, the guy that writes the tests. Are you trying to learn Power Apps?
Yeah. Yeah. And in my message, the question that I want to answer to somebody is why should you listen to me? And one of the things of like, hey, I'm recognized as a Microsoft MVP on business applications, using Power Apps. And he wasn't like, well, so what, Darren? Nothing like, it wasn't like talking down to me.
No,
It
not
was
at
like,
all.
and the last thing he said was, hey, nice to connect to you. And I
Yeah.
was like, I was a little humbled. I'm like, I think the first statement that I had in my response was, holy moly, Batman. Wow.
Yeah, it made me.
Because I
It
was
made me
actually
really, it just makes. I just wish we could really connect with him once and get him out here on our thing once. Wouldn't that be amazing? I think it's amazing that we've got Ron Cook sitting out here. I think I think that there's a lot of things that you bring to the table too. And I just wanted to say, Ron, that you had said, I don't know if this is the appropriate time. This is our live streams are pretty much just organic. We just go wherever it goes, So just throw something out there if you ever feel like you need, something comes to mind that might be important or add to it. Just throw it out there, But yeah, we recognize that you're go through quite a bit of stuff over there, so we're really glad to have you on here too with your experience. in your background.
And just for your audience, I mean, we have a 24 person IT group with a dozen dedicated in software development. As far as we're all Azure and SQL backend, and I got C#, Blazor, and whatnot, WinUI developers. So we have a full internal staff, but then maxed out, and then department people, power users, citizen developer types all over the place saying, hey, we see this platform, can you turn us loose? And I'm all about power to the people. I don't like IT being, we're behind the curtain. I want to enable and take some of the load off of us as an IT group. But like I said, I've got cost and especially governance concerns that we don't open Pandora's box and end up with a big old can of worms, especially Dataverse. If you let all kinds of people in doing whatever, Lord knows what that would look like after 5 years. So again, I think that's a whole separate session. If you guys want to put that on, I'd love to participate.
Absolutely.
Right. Because ultimately in your position, we talk about IT, they locking it down. But like, you're one of those people that want to say, hey, no, I'm an IT that says power to the people. But the problem is you got liability here. I mean, if that data gets messed up, that's millions of dollars. That's millions of dollars,
Right. It's not just that the Dataverse would become a mess when traditionally, we have a DBA, right? We have control over the environment. You can't just have people going and creating whatever kind of tables they want all over the place, or can you, is what maybe Microsoft is saying. But then also on the quality side of it, someone goes and even if it's only read data and they present it, we make $1 million decisions on that, and it was not interpreted properly from the sources because ITQA wasn't involved. How do we deal with that?
Absolutely.
And then as someone just put up there, the cost also, as I was looking at it, if you have an app that goes to 1,000 people, especially once you have 5, even if they hit it once a month, like this little PTO app I presented as a little initial use case, for 1,000 person company, you're talking $200,000 every single year just on the platform. And so I know there's pay as you go and some other options, but yeah, cost and governance, those are top of mind for me these days.
Dave Martin, I'm laughing not at what Ron's saying. I'm laughing at Dave Martin as he's talking, reading. The licensing is like opening the hood of a giant Rube Goldberg machine.
I had to create an AI chat bot to answer. I would just upload the Microsoft documentation on the licensing. I could just ask it a question, and because it's not very clear, and some people say it's a little bit of a dark art or sorcery, or it's a mystery. I mean, what you're dealing with is legality. So it's a legal agreement between you and Microsoft. But it would be nice if the licensing was more simple, straightforward, and they do seem to improve that. They do listen to that. When I say recently, that's a relative term, so it might be a year. Sometimes years are, the older I get, the faster time goes for me. They implemented this pay as you go, this Azure pay as you go. So anyhow,
like Dave's comment about hooking people up to Microsoft's mainline to bleed us dry. So yeah, definitely a concern and surprised. Microsoft's typical model is they bring in cheap and then they get their hooks and you're entrenched and then they jack it up. They came in high at the get-go with this, so I'm extra concerned, but intrigued. And again, it's a platform, and every layer that you go away from zeros and ones, it enables more people to build things, because you don't have to have the hardcore computer science degree to know the C++ or whatever. I think these tools are great. It's just, how do we use them the most effective way? So,
and I just and Ron and Darren, I just feel like we're missing something here. I just don't believe that Microsoft is going to price themselves out of the corporate market like they have with that premium. I just don't see it. I think that there's got to be some hole that we're not seeing that says, hey, if you're a corporation and you've got to have all this, come talk to us. We're going to give you a different price on that,
Well, and last night I created a few environments, still learning, and did hook up a couple of them, mapping them to Azure subscriptions that we have. and I put them in a separate resource group so I could see, as I even just play around with it, how am I being charged for this? Because it's outside the premium $20 a month user license. So I don't know how that works yet. I'm still trying to figure it out. But yeah, I mean, if I'm dropping $500,000 a year just on the Azure services, how much more is this going to add on top of it? Especially when I already have a software development team. So again, I don't mean to take away from this session. This could probably be a whole separate session, however you guys want to do it.
We're getting really good engagement in the chat.
Yeah.
So I don't mind talking about this and hyping up, guys. We're going to do a roundtable of some sort.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people want to understand it. So just to touch back on the conferences, Andrew Hess, who I would love to meet in person, he'll most likely be there, but I'll be at the Microsoft Community Conference in Orlando.
That's sooner than September. I might come out to that one too.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we can have our governance roundtable here in Orlando. Kurt and Rick, we're going to have to fly you down.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll have a virtual one first, even if we do that. But at least like a meetup. And then, okay. So this is an answer to somebody, Sam, that was asking how to pass collections in a flow. So Davis King answered that there in the chat. Andrew says they are new. It used to be just Ignite. Yeah. Let's see here. Just want to make sure I'm up to date. This is the huge benefit of you guys coming in live and interacting with me live, is that I'm going to read these comments, and as long as it has something to do with what we're presenting, then we'll bring it up here. This one is probably the best comment I've read so far. The main reason to listen to Darren is because he's so friendly. It's the personality. I like it. Picasso. And then looking, the Power Apps premium cost is why. So Patty says, is why my company's moving away from Power Apps. You know what my solution to that is? If I was a CTO of an organization, or I was consulted with this, I'm like, listen, get the premium license for those in IT who want it, or DBAs, definitely. Those outside of IT, right now we open up SharePoint for them to use. SharePoint is, in my opinion, much better than an Excel spreadsheet, and you've got some network shares helping everybody's, connecting to it, and create, allow them to create their SharePoint list and use as a data source. So in a lot of places I've been, IT they don't mind that as much, but on the people outside of IT, they do create messes for IT to clean up or to manage or to take over, to fix.
I'm sorry, Darren, when you start talking workarounds, I mean, first of all, there's SQL, and then, okay, Dataverse, yes, it's the Power Platform way as opposed to SQL, whatever. But then when you're like, well, if it's too expensive for you, here are some hacks. SharePoint backend, Excel, oh, don't use Excel. Well, you can, because then you don't have to pay the premium. Like, well, if you do this Teams thing with data, once you get into hacks, it's like, is this a real platform or not? I mean, workarounds, hacks, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it. So yeah. I take issue. I know you're presenting options, but once Microsoft or anyone starts talking about hacks and workarounds, I'm out.
Yeah, and I get that. In the thought, and I follow some people on TikTok. There's this one system engineer, network administrator, and she was talking about, when a guy says that he uses SharePoint as his database, I'm out. 70% of those that I pulled in the community tab, and I believe I had over 100 people answer this. And I plugged it on Twitter. So I tried to get as much response. And I think it was more like 71% people say SharePoint is the data source they're always reaching for, they always use, because they don't have the premium license. So I understand your side, as a full stack developer. I want to use a big boy database like SQL Server, and Kurt, is that right? 70%? of people out there using SharePoint as a data source.
That's what I've heard. That's what everybody else has heard too.
Yeah, you
know?
remind me on that. So although we may, look down on that, but I don't know if I would say the industry or the in the business world, for those that use M365, that is pretty much the most used. I talked to Matthew Devaney, who's another MVP, who runs an awesome blog, and he says all my examples use SharePoint because everybody is using SharePoint as a data source. So
and please don't misunderstand me. And yes, I hold true to that comment on the SharePoint. But overall, I'm not this power platform. No, as head of IT, we're not doing. Like I said, I'm trying to be open-armed about it, and I intend to be. And in fact, this week I even found and read 3 recent articles: one from T-Mobile, an Ardent Mills, and a Rabobank, where they have chosen Power Platform as their primary development platform at their entire organization, and they're much larger than mine. So, this thing is here and coming. And like I said, my whole thing is just about how the hell do I manage this? Pay for it and deal with the cost, but more important than the cost to me is the governance of it. I don't mean to be negative on Power Platform at all. I'm here. I just have a lot of concerns as we start to dip our toe in it.
Right. How do you navigate the changes? That's it. It's not about negativity. It's about how do you do it? Like you say, Ron, it's here. Obviously it's here.
And if I've got to put a DBA on the Dataverse to control standards and ensure it's done right, and I got to put an ITQA working with every citizen developer to ensure they're working with data right. Well, now it's IT. Oh my God! I thought the whole part thing was for me to free, and maybe it's just that you arm, the developers. You don't have as many developers. You use the citizen developer, but you still have to have your DBA. You still have to have your ITQA. And I know, Darren, you sent me that fusion model where it kind of all works together. But as soon as we start opening this can of worms, my whole software development group is going to go, wait, what do you want us getting with the company on? We're so busy trying to build stuff over here. And now you want to open up and have us deal with, 50 developers across the company. And gosh, we're already busy enough as it is. I don't have time. So.
But now I'm just going to throw something out there to make it. This might be really neophyte of myself because I don't know. I've not worked in an organization the size of yours. So, but I'm just wondering what would happen if you just let those citizen developers just work with SharePoint and just keep it separated from your data over there. And then if they need to access any of your data, maybe you could throw a read-only list at them, a view.
And even let's just say I gave them their own Dataverse. Like, I'm not going to manage it. It's an unmanaged Dataverse. You guys create whatever you want, go build whatever you want, have a good time.
Yeah.
That will work for a very small percentage of things, because at the heart of anything is corporate data. We got to have corporate data. We need access to corporate data. A lot of times it's read only. And technically we're using Power Platform. We have citizen developers building Power BI apps, right? So we are using Power Platform. But it's all about corporate data. Just giving people the mechanism to create their own tables and their own apps. Well, there could be some departmental utility things I could see some people build, but most everyone is like, no, we want that corporate data.
Yeah.
One of the larger companies I was working with was Holiday Inn, and I would work with this DBA. Of course, I was within the IT department, and I would go up and talk to him about, hey man, can you give my data gateway some more memory, and every time he had to deal with the Power Platform, the data gateway, it just looked like he just wanted to rip the hair out of his head. So I thought I'd share that. But this is something that that I saw that I thought was really good. I've highlighted the parts that I think, a concern like you would have, Ron.
Looks like I wrote this. Did I?
You did.
Is this me?
You did.
Okay.
And what I was looking at here is, this really needs to be addressed on the Power Platform. It's like every organization that I've worked with or for, their IT department, whether they're it's mostly the large organizations. where they don't have governance set up, and a lot of times they just want to put it off. The architects are looking at it, and okay, well, how much are we going to open this thing up? Every large organization, and maybe even the medium to large size, they didn't have governance set up. They wanted to set it up, but they're just sort of perplexed looking at it. The licensing cost and the governance, and the answer that Microsoft has given and Gartner has is this term called fusion development. And it's like, okay, well, we'll take a few people from this department over here and a few people within IT, and you have the developer and DBA and maybe a project manager, a business analyst, and hey, this is the team, and we're going to create this big solution with flows and apps and everything. And something that Kurt and I sometimes say is the term citizen developer is sort of like a unicorn. I think it does exist, but we're looking at maybe just using forms, and that's something that Kurt and I we just don't use. We don't use the form control within Power Apps. We like to use individual controls. We sort of take it from like almost like a software developer using Power Apps, But what I've seen from citizen developers, they create very simplistic applications, which is fine. But I think a missing component is training. And a lot of times when I'm working with or for these companies, I'm like, hey, let me head up some training here. Okay. So if you want to be given access to the Power Platform, you have to go through Darren's 3-part workshop, and I'll teach them database normalization. I'll teach them, best practices. And maybe we'll have like a little session from a DBA. Although I could probably do something like that. But, have like some type of training program where, like a forklift operator, before you get on our forklifts, you need to be certified.
If you let them create their own tables in a Dataverse, though, and sorry to cut you off, and if the argument is have an unmanaged one that the citizen developer can do whatever they want in it, and IT doesn't care, and they build whatever they want in it, okay, I have problems with that. But even with training, and even with guys, here are the standards, it's still going to be a mess. I mean, I even going in and creating tables and then changing the name of a column, and you go back and you see that, well, no, whatever you first named it is what it is forever. Column 1 or whatever. It's like, you got to be kidding me. If I ever reference this through SQL, I have to type that original name, not what it got changed. I mean, you got to have a DBA lock that thing down if you want that thing to be tight and standardized and evolve properly over the years to become a true corporate repository. If it's an anything goes, I mean, yes, people will get things done that they want, but that thing will be an absolute mess after 5 years.
Yeah.
Another idea, and it may not be one that you use, Ron, but we could create environments for these citizen developers, and hopefully we provide them training, whatever. But hey, if you want to promote this to the test or the staging or the UAT environment, or we're not even talking about production, there's a process that they have to go through.
I like that. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. They do their stuff in some sandbox department thing. Hey, this is now deemed a corporate important, whatever you call it, enterprise grade application. We want it to the production environment. And we go, no, you didn't name this right, that right, whatever, go back. We're busy as IT. They go get things right. We approve it. It then comes into the other Dataverse. I like that.
That's what's going to have to be done. Yep. Also, I was thinking too, you could still give them access to read-only views, and have Power Automate update those views automatically. And that way, if a department wants to do some work within their sandbox, they would have access to these views of the corporate data, and Power Automate would update that for them every night or something.
But it's kind of like when my wife asked me to help pick up the house. I do it so poorly, it ends up creating more work for her than if I just hadn't been involved at all. And once a citizen developer comes to IT saying, oh, I'm going to do the work, but can you just tell me how to model this table? And then how do I It's like, oh, just, what was the Saturday Night Live thing with Chris Kattan? Move, whatever. I'll just do it myself.
Yeah.
So there's that.
There is that.
You call the IT guy and he shows up and it's like, okay, we'll click on, and they're like, what? He goes, move. And he sits down, and I love that skit. So Jason over here in the private chat says, great discussion around governance. Yeah, I think so. This has turned into, governance. And I think I need to update the title and the description of the video. It's like, not only are we talking about PTO, but we're talking about governance concerns as well.
I'm sorry if I hijacked it.
No,
That's okay.
no, not at all.
I'm kind of not, but I just said that anyway.
We do this all the time. That's really what we have. We have got an idea of what we're going to do, but it sort of takes on a live stream takes on a life of its own based on the people that are interacting with us live. And I love having you on. And I love all these insights because I can guarantee you there's someone in every large organization that has the same concerns you do. And you don't hear a lot about it. There are some MVPs that specialize in the governance, and I think that's good. But
and you never know, this could really help us too, Ron, because now Darren and I could maybe be involved in some of that kind of training with some of these larger organizations. This could be something big for us too, having these conversations. You never know where they go,
yeah.
So,
and maybe over the course of a few months or over time, I can sort of beef up my experience and knowledge of governance, and maybe I can talk more of that. That's why I think every company should have a liaison that can speak different languages, i.e. tech, or finance person that truly understands things from both sides. And that's from Engineer Your Life. Otherwise, she says, otherwise, you just have different departments fighting about why they don't need things. And at the end, the business suffers.
Yeah.
And over the year, just being in IT for 25 years, I hear and I sort of feel people's frustration with IT saying no all the time. And there's a reason why IT either says no or, hey, we have a process for that, because otherwise it'd be like the Wild West, and it would just be absolute crazy. Let's see. Yeah, and so this is a confirmation. This is a great topic to talk about here.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying this conversation from Max. Okay, so I'm going to go back over to this where we left off, and I'm going to go back to design mode, and you see the images coming up.
What's up,
now, what I could have done right here is said user with empty parentheses and say photo, and it would have pulled this up. But I wanted to pull it in from Dataverse. Okay, so we have that. Now, the lookup, if you give it 3 parameters, you're going to get a single value within that row. If you only give it 2 parameters, you're going to get the whole record. So we should be getting just this photo field. Now we'll see if I say dot, look at that. We have full and we have value. So I think the full is, the full res photo. If I said value, perhaps it is not, maybe it's a smaller size.
Yeah, I thought they had maybe that was in SharePoint that we were doing that. I thought they had a thumbnail.
Yeah, a document library where you've got a photo, and it doesn't have to be a photo either. It could be a Word document, and it will create a thumbnail for that file. And you've got, I think you've got like 3 different size thumbnails you can pull from. So in that case, it's sort of cool. SharePoint is great at being a document management system. But
There you go. Okay.
So we've got that. Okay. So what I want to do is whenever somebody uses this application, I want to check to see if they're in this table. If they're not in this table, then I want to add them. So how do I do that? Well, we could do a lookup like we did over here for this image. Okay. So I'm going to copy this. We get over here on this button and we'll put some logic in here. Okay. We'll do an if, use an if function. Try to get rid of, sometimes this intelligence gets in the way. Okay. The first parameter of the if is you need to evaluate down to a Boolean type of value. Okay. So we'll do a lookup. Let's not look at the photo. Let's just look at the name. Okay. And if we get a somebody that doesn't exist, I believe we could check for it just is blank. And the function is blank does give us that Boolean value that the if function expects as the first parameter. Yeah. Always use good indentation and make sure code easier to read. Okay. If it is blank, we're going to do a patch. If not, we won't do anything else. So we just have two parameters for the if. If we wanted an else block, we would add in a third parameter. Okay, so I'm going to save it. I'm going to run it. Now, if I click this button and nothing seems to happen, we'll know that it knows that I'm already in there. So I'll do that. And I didn't see any champagne bubbles going across. So we know that that works. So what we're going to do is I'd almost like to put this in the app startup. So I'm going to copy that. I am going to click on app. Now, it is my personal opinion that Microsoft would like to get away from the OnStart place where you can put code that is run every time your app starts up. Okay. And the reason for that is some people that perhaps didn't design their application properly. It's just atrocious, especially if you have it embedded into Teams. Sometimes it takes a really long time, and it's like, well, they created a place called formulas. Okay. So yeah, formulas. But I want this code to run whenever it starts up. So I'll put that there. In fact, if you go into your settings within an app, you can do a search here for OnStart and see what comes up. Use non-blocking OnStart rule. Okay, so this is a preview setting. So I think over time, they're going to turn this off by default. And if you really want to use it, you can go in and turn it on. Okay, so what if they do that? Where else would I put my code? Well, I would put it in a screen on start, perhaps on the first screen that loads up. Put it
on visible. Yeah,
the on visible. Yeah, we can do that.
Now the problem with that is that if you want that just to work one time, and somebody goes to a different screen and then comes back to it, that's going to fire again. So you're going to have some kind of Boolean logic placed in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, if you're working in a browser, you're going to have to leave the screen in order for that first screen to come on, right? If you're working in a browser. Now, obviously, if you have a published version, it'll do it. But
so Rick and Kurt, you're in this tenant here, Power Labs US, and I'm going to share this with you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a publish, and I'd like for you guys to click on the link, bring it up, and become, have your records added in there. So we got somebody else besides just myself.
All right. Give me just a little bit here. I got stuff.
And now I have another. And what's cool is you guys can go in and add your request off with some PTO off. And so we'll get a little bit more data there. I do have this little button that we worked on yesterday, and I'll make that true so we can look at it.
Is that in your sandbox, Darren?
It is. So if I, yeah. And I'm hoping that you guys have access to that.
So, Darren, this is a sandbox environment for you, right?
Yeah.
Only if it's an easy answer. The difference between a sandbox and a developer environment, or if that's not a quick answer, don't
Yeah.
answer.
It's a very good question. And I'm glad you brought it up. What I'm going to do is say,
I don't mean to take you away from this. Sorry.
yeah, mint types.
Here I go messing things up again. I just thought if it was a quick answer.
It sort of is. Okay, so I'm going to bring this over real quick because I think people will be interested in knowing this. There is a great table here that sort of explains all of it. So you have a production environment, you have a default environment, and that's always going to be just one. You got a sandbox, you got a trial, and a developer. Okay. So in the sandbox, you have full control. If used for testing, only user access is needed. Developers require environment maker access to create resources. And the developer is limited control. Security groups can't be assigned to developer environments. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share this link with you guys in the chat. So you can.
Thanks. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no worries at all. And so I have this button here called button get data. And I explain why sometimes I create buttons like this. I sort of use them as like little procedures that I can have. So I'm going to zoom this back up. All right, so get data. Let's look at the code for this. Okay. Now, one thing I wanted to do, I was talking about yesterday, is hey, let's go get all the years that have data for this particular person and put it in this, that collection there. So if I were to run this, hit the button, get data, it's going to go get all the data for me for the current year. And then what I want to do is add a drop down list here, put it on the screen. And then what we could do is actually use that collection, COL years. What did I call it there? Yeah, call years. Okay. And then, if I were to look at this, look, we got 2024. Now it would still be a good idea to add the next year. So what I'll do for this button, I'm going to open this up and I'll do a little if statement and to check to see if we have next year in there already. So
Incidentally, I ran the program and I put myself in there and took some time off. So I'm at -1.
The approval denial will be the next feature we add, Kurt.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad you did
it. I
Kurt,
asked
you're
Darren,
so valuable. I can't let you have any time off.
Whatever. Darren says, we're going to do a PTO. I said, what's a PTO? He said, bless your heart. You don't get any of that.
Guys, don't file any complaints with the federal government on me here. We're a small operation, and Kurt's a contractor. But
just to give you a quick bit of background, Darren. I mean, I was a consultant my whole life. Accenture, of course, I'm sold. It was called Anderson back then, and it was only when I went W-2, which I hadn't been W-2 for a company in forever after Anderson, went W-2 with the company I'm with now, and they handed me this piece of paper, and they're like, every month, we're going to email you this. We want you to print it. We want you to fill it out. We want you to sign it, scan it, and send it back. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, give me a weekend, and we'll digitize this. And our HR group was like, look, if it's not broke, don't fix it, don't touch it, whatever. I took hands off it, but it's why I threw this to you as an extremely simple use case as dipping our toe in the water Power Apps.
Right.
I like it. So when I worked for the state of Florida as a contractor, That's what I had to do every time I submitted a timesheet or did a billing. I think I had to do it at least once a month, but it might have been or every 2 weeks or something. And yeah, it was all that. It was print it out, sign it, scan it, do this, do that, go get a signature from here, get a signature from there. It was felt a little ridiculous. And then to your point, it's like, hey, can I create a power apps for this? Government entities, they move a little slow, and they like the tried and true ways that have been in effect for 20, 30 years. So
Yeah, their biggest reason for not changing something is it's the way we've always done it. Which
And
there's no reason.
And of course, my thing though, even if it's one app, $10 per app per user per month, and even if they're hitting it just once a month, that's 200,000, or no, that'd be $100,000 a year,
Yeah.
just for the platform, just for this one app. So that isn't gonna fly.
No.
yeah, I had to use SharePoint for everything that I built for the state of Florida because they weren't
I'm
gonna.
saying SharePoint like it's not a bad word.
I mean, I used to think it was a terrible word, but I'm kind of getting partial to it in some cases.
Okay.
It's not. I mean, there's no security on the back end. That's why you would probably just like cringe like crazy. But it's a solution for people that aren't that you don't want to mess with the real data. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's better than it was, but I mean, Microsoft. It's like Microsoft Project is so good, everyone uses Smartsheet now.
Yeah, I feel that way about it. Excel. People people love their spreadsheets. I'm like, guys, come on, get away from that Excel.
Yeah. At least SharePoint is a step up from that. That's yeah.
Well, I mean, you do have some concerns. If you got over 5,000 records, I don't know if this is really a limitation when it comes to Power Apps, but I know within a view, what a view can only go up to 5,000. Thankfully, we're not using a view when we query a SharePoint list, but some people notice things that are sluggish. That might be because it wasn't designed right. The schema, but
And I see Patty says SharePoint for her back end and it's working. So I mean, I don't mean to trash it. Don't trash it if you haven't tried it. I cringe when I hear, well, there's a workaround. If you don't want to pay the big bucks, here's the workaround. I cringe at that. So sorry, I don't mean to all over SharePoint, but I'm reluctant to look at that as a solution for our back end.
Well, I know when I started, I did. When Darren started me working with his Power App stuff, I was like SharePoint, yeah, I was, but I've kind of become more enamored with it because I've kind of learned how to work with it, and it's not terrible. It's not terrible. It's not great. It's not great.
That's a great sell.
Yeah.
Well, I have a few caveats. I tell people, never, ever, ever, never, ever, ever, ever use choice fields. I don't care if it's SharePoint or even Dataverse. And I'm sure many people are like, oh, what? I use choice columns all over the place. Well, you're going to end up having some delegation issues.
Yep.
That should be another database table.
Yep.
You're creating like a little list in there. If it's small and doesn't change, you could put it into the application layer. That's how I prefer to do it. But if multiple apps are connecting or writing to the database.
Well,
you're
breaking three normal forms right there by having those choice fields in there.
I tell you what, SharePoint's got over Dataverse. Dataverse does not have a Boolean type of value.
Right. Nope.
And it was like, well, Darren, how you do that is you create a choice. Exactly. You got a yes, no choice. And over here in a different table, you create another yes, no choice. And it's like it creates like these little things for every single. No, I want a bit field like SQL Server gives me. And SharePoint does it well. You say a checked yes, no. And that's a simple Boolean field. So that's what I do like about it. So I don't use lookups in SharePoint. Lookups are good in Dataverse, but I don't use choice in any database,
And data is king kind of puts it out there good. Whether it's Excel or SharePoint, people need to use the platform in the right way. But that's the whole point that Ron's talking about right there. I mean, that's the whole issue is when you have citizen developers, it's not going to get used in the right way. It's just not. Even to the best of their ability. And if they go through the training to be able to get to the point where they're doing that, well, now they're not citizen developers anymore. They might as well be working IT. Ron might as well hire him as an IT person now.
So Engineer Your Life says the Army uses SharePoint Power Apps for some systems. My fiance has been using SharePoint, and recently he had to download Power Apps along with other usual security management. Interesting. Okay. And what I do if I have to use SharePoint is I don't tell the users, hey, it's in SharePoint. I don't want anyone going directly to that SharePoint list and editing the data. So I sort of lock that down. I've got a few tricks that I share with people to make it very difficult for people to modify the data,
And that might be a good thing to kind of go over on a live stream someday too, It might help Ron too if he ever goes down that rabbit hole there but I'm just wondering, Engineer Your Life. So if you could kind of break that down, what you just said there, kind of like break out the crayons for me, because I'm not really sure I'm understanding what you're saying. I think there's something really important in that. I'm missing it. If you could kind of break that down, that last reply. Break out the crayons. Got to draw me a picture.
That's actually one of the Kurtisms that's going to be released on the PPC.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing, and Engineer Your Life says, sure. Very cool. Engineer Your Life, I hope that you're over in the Learn Power Apps community. The link is in the description. So these are some good discussions that could carry over into the community. So what I'm doing here, Jason says locking SharePoint down would be a great PPC topic.
Would be.
Thank you. That's what I struggle with the PPC is like, Kurt, what are we going to talk about for just a little bite-sized topic? So thank you for that. Remember that, Kurt. Remind me of that.
Oh, I will.
And Engineering Your Life is not in the community yet. Well, come on.
Right.
What are you waiting for? I got a free Power Apps crash course over there, and it's like a Facebook group, but like 100 times better. No advertisements. Everybody's there for the same reason. Nobody's on there sharing pictures of their, or just pasting some random stuff on their timeline. It's all about Power Apps or the Power Platform.
But now, if you're really serious about Power Apps and learning Power Apps, and you want to check out the Accelerator program, book a call with us, talk about it. We've got some Accelerator students in here in the live stream right now. You guys can maybe talk a little bit about that. But definitely the free community, and then we've got the Accelerator program. So,
and if you've never heard of the Accelerator, that's actually our flagship offering where we commit to you for 12 months. And we make you a Power Apps freelancer, or we make you a superhero where you're at, or help you get a job. We work with you on the projects that you're currently working on. We have practical labs and assignments. I mean, we literally have an 1.5-hour video where Kurt and I talk for an 1.5 hours describing everything that's included in that. You'll be a part of our tenant here. You'll get your own sandbox, your own Dataverse database. And I will have to tell you, I spend a lot of money on that tenant, Ron.
Spends a lot of money on the tenant.
There's somebody, hundreds of dollars, which would probably be nothing to your organization. But for a small operation like me, there was one environment that was going a little crazy, and I was spending like $300 a month on that. So I had to address that. But anyhow. So there's a link up to the Accelerator if you guys want to know more about that. So I'll leave that up there for a few more moments. But so what I want to do is I want to add the next year on there if it's not in this collection. So I'm going to check to see if we have anything, and I'm going to filter that down. I'm going to go look at the name. Filter that. I don't need to do a filter. I need to do a lookup because I'm only need to look at one record here.
What are we doing here? I've been focusing on the stuff over here. I haven't been looking at what you've been doing, Darren.
So I want to have a drop down list for, like, if I'm a manager and I come into the screen, I want to pick a different employee, to either view or to approve, deny, or to modify it a little bit.
Okay.
And I also want the years. So if I want to look at last year, the current year, the future year, and it's only going to show the ones that are available, with the exception of next year. So that's what I want to do, is I want to make sure, like, if I go into this little drop down, there's a 2024 because we have 2 records for Darren Neese. Okay. But I want to see 2025. So,
and you also want to show 2023 and 2024, right? If they have, did you want to do that too?
Well, we already have that in place. So if we click on this button here, the first line of code, we create a collection, and we go look at the allotments table, and we filter back everything for a specific person. Okay. We do a distinct. So we have everything they have a record for. So if they had something going back 20 years, all 20 years are going to be there. We just want to make sure that we have next year. And probably that's going to be most of the time. People are asking off, but when it hits around December or maybe November, October, they might want to schedule some PTO in January. So I need to make sure that extra year there, and I want to show you guys the way that I would do it.
Yep.
So I would do a lookup on this, and I am interested in the name field. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this drop down list, and we have a collection called years. And what's great about Power Apps is, let me see if I can make things bigger. Okay. Here in the coding window, you could double click on a term, a variable, or just click in there, and you'll see it's a table type of value, and there's the name of it, and you hit this downward chevron, and you'll be able to see all the values. So this thing, because we use distinct, it only has value. So that's what I need to be looking at. Okay. So I should just look at that, which I am. I'm just looking at, probably need to zoom out a little bit, maybe 125. Okay. And so we're going to do a lookup to see if we have the next year. Okay. But so the today, and that's actually a function. I need to have parentheses in there. We're going to check the year, but you know what? We need to add 1 to that. It's next year. So we're going to look inside this. This needs to be just value.
Yep.
And I'm going to say value there. Okay. And let's do it in this blank. We go to look up on the collection, the in-memory collection. If it's blank, well, we need to add it. Okay, so instead of patch, I think what I'll do is we'll do a collect.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so we have call years. What do we want to give it? We want to give it a record, a single column record. And we want to say the year of today plus 1. Needs to be all dynamic. Okay. So I'm going to save. I'm going to run it. And I'm going to say we've got a pretty good turnout today and a lot of interaction. So the topic of this PTO, I think we should have a series on this, because when usually on live streams we sort of we go down little rabbit trails, or off topics. It takes some time. So we have the next year. Okay, so we've got that. So any questions on that, guys? I'm going to keep an eye on the chat here. The accelerator is great. It helps break down the nuances. Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess what I would do in this case is not make that so wide. I mean, we have 4 digits here, maybe 100. Let's see what that looks like. That looks fine. And for the default, what I'm going to do, now this is a modern drop down, and I don't see a default. But I need to figure that out. So we have default selected items.
Selected items. Would that be it?
Yeah. So what we'll do here is we'll use curly braces in powers. Now, curly braces denotes a record a lot of times, almost always. So I'm going to say, hey, the record that's got a value of year today. Okay. And look what it did. It selected that year by default. Okay, so that's good. So now what we can do for this drop down, we need to name it DRP year. Okay, and we'll actually reference that whenever we go to get the data. You see over here, we go get all of the allotments for the current person. And then I was thinking of this one down here. Okay. There's the allotments. And so down here, what we did was we said that we're always going to look at the current year. Well, let's make that the drop down list and say selected dot value. So whenever that changes, we needed to go get the data again. So we do have imperative type of properties for controls. Whenever you see an on, well, that's an event type of property. Okay. So whenever that changes, I'm going to call the code, the click event of this button here. So I've got like a little callable procedure so I don't repeat myself. So you got the developer acronym DRY, don't repeat yourself. Well, you want to not repeat yourself in Power Apps as well.
So I kind of want to quiz the audience out there. Can somebody put in the comments if you guys know what's imperative code? What is that? What's that mean when he says that? Can anybody tell me out there? It's a quiz, pop quiz. So just want to throw that out there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on the comments.
We have imperative and we have declarative. Is that right?
That's right.
Can anybody explain that? Good stuff.
Yeah, we'll take a little consensus. Do people understand that? Maybe I should go into that a little more if people are like, no, I'd love to hear it.
Well, you've gone into it before. I just want to see if people are paying attention.
Well, I went into it quite a bit yesterday in the workshop.
You did.
And guys, if you want to get at the on-demand video for yesterday's live stream where we created all this, the links are below, and I'm offering a discount. Now, the price could change, so I almost don't want to mention it, but it's right now it's like half off, So I just wanted to I want to test different price points to see what people respond to or don't respond to, and I thought that I'd do that as a test. I think that would be a great value. Kurt, how long did we go yesterday?
Oh my goodness, I thought, aren't we still going? I actually thought, we were still going. I didn't know.
You probably had a dream last night about creating PTO.
Right. I'm like, we're still going.
We started at 1 p.m. EST, so that's going to be the slated time on Fridays, 1 p.m. And yesterday we went, I think almost close to 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Some people had to drop off, but as soon as there's a little bit of, I like to sort of tweak the audio and do a little bit of editing and then upload it as a fresh new video.
Yeah.
But you guys, if you want to purchase that, you'll get all that stuff from yesterday.
And incidentally, like you just kind of alluded to it, but we're going to be doing this every Friday now. We're going to try to do a workshop every week. And I want this to be, we're going to get better at doing these workshops too. That was our second one, and it got better yesterday than it did the week before. But I'd really like to get to a point where we're actually interacting more with the students that are signing up for the workshops. And I think we're going to do that. I think it's going to get better. So
absolutely.
Different topics, you get different interaction, right?
I'd like to automate a lot of the processes, links going out, the all that stuff. So do you see how the image is a little pixelated here?
Mm-hmm.
A question I'd like to answer is, if I say .full, does it look any better? I think it looks a little better. Did you say? So it goes to show you if you're going to make a big image, you want to use full. I was sort of wondering that, so I thought I'd answer for myself and everybody else. So guys, the workshop for next week is about planning and design your projects. Okay. And I want each of you who are attending to have a project in mind that you're bringing to that workshop. And what we're going to do is we're going to sort of make sure that we've got all of our entities defined. I might actually send out like little 10 or 15-minute videos to prepare you for that. So I don't have to go over everything, but it should be an exciting one. And if there's any on the payment links for the workshops that are in the video description, there is a place on the checkout to put what workshop that you're trying to buy. If it's past, well, there's two. The first one was, what did we cover, Kurt? I forgot.
Can't think what it was. It was the
decision tree.
It was the decision tree. Yeah,
that was a cool one. So if you wanted that, say decision tree. If you wanted the one from yesterday, the PTO stuff, just say the PTO in there. And then if you're purchasing the one for this next week, there's a place for you to say, hey, this is cool, I'm signing up, but I'd really like this topic. I want to workshop on galleries or something, or whatever.
We definitely need to do a workshop. We need to do a couple of workshops on galleries, actually.
Absolutely.
I mean, in my world,
collections,
power apps, well, collections too. Yeah. Power apps and galleries, they're synonymous. You can't, I think power apps would be junk without gallery control. That gallery control changes everything. Well, look what you've done with it already, right? It's very hard to write a good power app program without that gallery control. So
absolutely. Yeah,
next to collections, gallery control, collections is probably the biggest thing you need to master, but the gallery control is the most important control to master out of all of the power app controls.
Absolutely. So you guys see a problem here? So I went to, I hit 2025 and I got negative numbers. Well, what we need to do over here is, so we did some math with the values that were pulled in. And what I'd like to do is have, like, if this is blank, okay. Now there's different ways we could do it. If you wanted dashes there, then you'd use a dash. But when we do the math later on, instead of referring to this label here, we would just pull in a 0. So let's make this flexible. Okay, so the requirements actually had a dash in here. Okay, so if I said this right here, cut. This is a perfect example for using a with function. Okay. Yeah. So do a with. Okay. It's a function. And trying to get to a new line. So I'll say with, and we need curly braces. It's going to create like a little record here.
Yeah.
This
It
will
is
be
a
indented.
it's a very well scoped context variable right here.
Absolutely.
It's only within that control or within that function.
It's within this these parentheses here. This is the start.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like you're creating a local variable or a context variable just for this block, or you know.
Yeah, and if you were a C++ programmer, it'd be just like a block, it'd be a code block scope, right?
Yeah. Well, back in VB6 we had with. Now I don't think it was a function,
No,
but
nope.
but it worked almost the same here.
It
But the
did.
thing is, you could only have one value. Here in Power Apps, we could have 15 values. You know.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, allotted days. Now, should I spell that? And it doesn't matter if we spell it right, but it sort of bothers me if I didn't spell. I think maybe there should be two T's in there. So anybody feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, very good. Okay, so Joshua in the private chat says imperative. You write code to describe each step needed to achieve your goal, like a detailed plan. Oh, before that, he said declarative. You describe what you want, not how to do it. So, Kurt, did you want to respond to that? Because he's the only person that answered your question there.
I'm trying to look at the thing so I can make sure that I'm. Where did he go on that? Oh, that was in the private chat.
Yeah,
Okay.
in the private chat.
Let's look. Ron said he had to go. He had a hard stop.
Yeah.
Imperative. You write code that describes each step needed to achieve your goal, like a detailed plan. Yeah, I guess that's one way of putting it. But in terms of the actual code that's actually being performed, imperative means it's more of a behavioral thing. And that's kind of what you're saying in here. You describe each step that's you're needed to achieve your goal. So each step, you're actually doing the steps within the function that you're writing. That's imperative. It's more of like a behavioral type thing. You know, what your function is going to do. When you see on change or on change or on select, those things there's going to be some behaviors. And you'll see that those are the only place where you can actually put a list of instructions for the computer to go out and run. You have semicolons in there to separate those things. You can't do that in declarative code. Declarative code is basically just an assignment. So really declarative code is more like a property that describes what your code is going to look like, or your control is going to look like, right? And then the imperative is your behavior is like what your control is going to do. So when you select something, which is an event, you're gonna go out there and you're gonna perform the stuff that's inside that event. So I said all that to say, another way to put in that would be imperative would be behavioral, and declarative would be description.
I like it. With imperative code, typically the code goes in and it starts with on, right?
Yep.
On visible, on hidden, app on start. A button has an on select. A checkbox has a on check, on uncheck, as a toggle does. So they all start with on, as at least Microsoft's being very consistent with that.
Yeah.
Do you know how you use a semicolon to split up your lines of code? You can only do that in an imperative block. If you try to use a semicolon or use two different statements, you can't do that in a declarative. That declarative should come down to one value. Yeah, I like it. So perhaps future workshops, galleries, variables, and collections. I think collections would be huge.
Collections would be huge.
Yeah.
I could
I mean, you
talk
got a
for
whole
days
module on
collections.
that. What's that?
I could talk for days on collections.
You could. Joshua says, so a button would be declarative, but the event would be imperative. Well, a button, let's go
Yeah.
take a look at this. So we've got a button over here.
The properties in the button would be
Yeah. So look at all these. So you click on any control, okay, or object within Power Apps. Look at all these things. All of them are declarative except the on select. Yeah.
in more traditional languages, and Joshua, you're familiar with the traditional languages. In a more traditional language, those would be events, right? If you were in Visual Basic or in C#, those are .NET, those would be events, you know. And then you would write your code inside those events, and those would actually be called methods then, right? Because your control is going to do something, you know, and that would be a method, something that's going to do. Whereas the properties are going to be like their colors and your font size, all that. That's going to be a description.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to look like. It's going to be an adjective.
So guys, I want to sort of pause on this screen and this block of code here. So I finished my with block. Okay. So I want to talk about the with function a little bit because I don't have like a video dedicated to with. So I wanted to take the time to do this. So the with keyword in Power Apps is a function. So you need starting and ending parentheses. And you are in fact creating a list, sort of like how you do with update context or local variables. We got curly braces in there. Okay. And I could have 15 different scoped variables. What's the scope of this variable that I created? A lot a day. Well, the scope is between these parentheses within the function. I could have named a lot a day anything. But what did I put? What is the value? Why did a lookup? Why am I using a with function? Because I need to reference it twice. I don't want to have to do a lookup. I don't want to have to do a round trip to the database twice. I want to do it once. I do it up here in the first parameter. These curly braces are the first parameter of the with function. And then all throughout the code down here as the second parameter, I can reference it with that variable. Kurt, do you feel like I explained that thoroughly and in a straightforward way?
I think so.
Anything you want to add to it?
Not right now.
All right, very good. So we have that. And if I run it, we have dashes. Okay. Why am I using dashes? Because the requirements called for it. And it was a little bit of a challenge. I mean, I could have used zeros instead of dashes, and we wouldn't have had this error that I have to deal with now. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to look at this. And we have an error because a dash can't be converted to a number. And that's what the value function does, is it converts it to a number. So what I want to do here is, let's see here. I want to look at this. I almost want to use coalesce. And coalesce searches for like a null value or a blank. But in this case, it's either a dash or not. So we'll have to use an if statement here. Okay, we'll check to see if that's a dash. Okay, if it is a dash, well, I didn't want that. It would be 0. Otherwise, we'll use the label. Okay. Now, when you see repeated values, you might want to start thinking, oh, with block could be used here. But this would be less lines of code, and I'm not making a round trip to 80 data sources, so I'll leave it as is. But that will convert this to a 0 if there's a dash there. So now we should not have, we shouldn't have any errors, but we got these negative values that we have to deal with. Joshua says, with functions, I see that as the difference between local and global. What would you say to that, Kurt?
That is very local, right? That with function is the scope of that is going to be only within the block that it's in. Okay, so it's extremely local, only to that block, right? Everything is local if you really want to look at it from that perspective. But even a global is local to the whole thing, right? The whole app. But we have 3 levels in Power Apps, and you really have 3 levels in other traditional languages too. You have the block level scope, which is what we're dealing with. Then you have the local, which would be on the context of that module, or in this case, that screen, to the screen that we're working with. It breaks it up. So you have and they call that a context variable. The context of this variable is going to be with this screen. And you use a function called update context to change the values of that variable in the context of that screen. Okay, that's where that comes from. Then you have the set function, which is what you use for the global stuff. So you have the set function. Now it's funny because in the on start, they want us to get away from the app on start, but the app on start doesn't let us do anything except for global stuff in it. Now. So they say, well, go to formulas or go to functions. Well, we can't use update context or set inside of our functions, our UDFs yet. So we have to do something. And that requires you to do the on start or use your on visible properties. So I said all that to say, global is you use global. You start off with the set, then you have update context with your screen wide. Set is going to be you're going to see that across your entire application. Update context is going to be local to your screen, and the width is going to be only to that block of code. There we have it. Thus saith the Kurt.
Yeah, the term scope is really important. In photography, if you use a fancy camera, there's this thing you got to deal with called depth of field. So you notice how the lights behind me are all blurry? That's what I was going for. That's intentional. I don't know. It's sort of fancy. It's called bokeh or bokeh. The photographers can't agree on how it's pronounced, but there's a depth of field. I'm using an f-stop that focuses very sharply on my face. Okay. Now, if I move off here, it will focus on the lights or maybe the chair, but there's like this depth of field. You might notice my ears or the back of my head might be a little blurry. Okay. So scope is like this little area in which something occurs, like a depth of field. So what's the scope? Is it global? Is it local? Is it, in C#, I think we got 5 different scopes. You got friend, private, public, friend, local, and then you got blocks.
Yeah, when you're dealing with object-oriented programming, you're right. You've got 5 levels. I was just thinking from a programming perspective, you've got 3, but you're right. Yeah. You've got and block. That's the word. That's what I was looking for.
Block,
the block of code, and that's what the with the function emulates in Power Apps is a block of code. In Pascal and in C++, you would see the curly braces. Everything in between those curly braces would be that block of code. And Power Apps takes those curly braces away, and they have a with function, and you put everything within that with function. And really, that with is nothing but a formula. It's really nothing but a formula. Now, interesting. Something I've not tried. I might have to go play with a little bit. I've never needed to yet, but I'm going to try because I'm going to do a video on with. That's why I said I really don't have a whole lot to say now about it, because I think we're going to need to do a video on this, man. And
I think we should.
And I'm thinking, what is that curly? Darren? What is that? What are those curly brackets delineate? What does that mean when you see those curly brackets?
Most of the time, it's a record that you're working with in Power Apps.
So I'm thinking maybe we can have multiple variables inside of that with. multiple things, multiple items in there. So
Yeah. Like I was saying, we could have 15 different things that we could
we did say that.
name
Yeah, I
off.
wasn't paying attention. Yeah.
So, guys, if you weren't paying attention to what I was doing on the screen, I am enlisting the help of ChatGPT to give me good code comments. In Kurt's class, when he taught me, if you didn't have any comments in here, points off.
Points off.
Points off. Oh, this is the start of the code. Okay, that's a little silly. But this is great. So if you guys want to understand anything that was going on in here,
It does a pretty good job. It really does. I've used that a few times. It really does a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I've actually fooled it a couple times though. Not fooled it, but I got so complicated in my code that ChatGPT says it looks like you're computing a mode here, but the code is just too complex to comment. That's what it said. I said, "What? Did I just outcode ChatGPT?"
Yeah, so I know some people use ChatGPT to help them with their Power Apps project, and even the co-pilot that you can enlist the help of.
Oh boy, I did. Yeah,
I don't know.
We had an accelerator student. He booked a call with me one time, and he had a big mess with his code. He couldn't get it to work. And I went in and I looked at this, and I said, "What? Did you do all this?" I said, "You put all this in here? Because this isn't what we ever talked about. We never talked about doing stuff like this." And he's like, "Oh, I had ChatGPT." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Okay, that explains it.
So about an hour and a half later of going in there and doing brain surgery to his code, I got it down to about 5 lines of code. That's all he needed. I took out like maybe 50 or 60 lines of code and said, "Don't do that with ChatGPT."
Well, look at what I just did here. I pulled down Copilot, which is supposed to help me with Power Apps. How do I use the with function? I can't do that because it doesn't seem related to Power Apps. Please describe what you want to do with this app. Then the Copilot can build you out a full app, as long as it's one table. So I like where AI is going, but it's not necessarily good for everything. And you need to know when to use it, when not to use it. Somebody mentioned something. I use it for gathering requirements. I use that as well. That's actually
It's a great
thing.
tool for that. It's a great tool for things that you have to do that are redundant. Okay. But here's the thing. If you're going to try to code with it, you still got to know about the code in order to babysit it. You've got to babysit ChatGPT to make sure it's not doing anything crazy. You got to know enough about it to say that's not going to work. That's not what I'm looking for. And also, for those of you guys, now ChatGPT is really nothing but it pulls stuff from the internet from all the way across. It's a plagiaristic thing. It does everything it does is plagiarism. Okay, so if you're using this to write something that's original, be careful because we can actually put in there and say, "Hey, ChatGPT, was this copied? Was this plagiarized?" And it's going to tell you. It's going to tell you. So, it's funny because I guess some students have been doing that in school thinking, I'm just going to have them ChatGPT do my term papers. Nope, you're going to get caught.
Yeah. Okay. So how do I do a bouncing ball?
Oh, boy. That's not going to be related.
Whoa, it's going to reveal it right here. Everybody's going to know how to do lab 2 now. I can't do that.
It should have said, "Go ask Kurt."
Yeah. Okay, so select button data. So while we're talking there, I'm like, okay, if I click on 2025, okay, it looks like it's gotten the 2025, but it still says 2024. So I'm a little perplexed here. Okay, so if I go look at default selected items, we've got this. I think maybe what I should do instead is give it a string. Maybe. Oops. Okay. It doesn't like that. The table value. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll say here for today will be the default.
Yep.
So what I want to do is do a filter because it says it wants a table. Well, I just want to give it one record. So I'll do a filter properly, call years. And what I'll say is where the year of today. Oh, I need parentheses in there. So Kurt, I'd like to hear what your opinion and also Rick, if you have any thoughts as well. What's the scope of this live stream? So, I mean, we've been going for a while, right? So I'm trying to fix this. Is there any feature that we should really throw in by the end of this session today?
Yeah, I think you should be able to select the name too.
Okay. What do you
And
think,
maybe
Rick?
have a search on the name.
Sounds good.
Kurt, will you give Rick a hard time about something so we could, or
That's fine. I'm having microphone problems, so I'm being
oh,
quiet.
okay.
Oh, don't. Oh, poor Rick. Oh, don't pick on me. I got microphone problems.
So, guys, you probably haven't seen Rick on this live stream before, but he's incredibly intelligent. Okay. His background is not power ups or software development. I'll put it at that. And he's got a great sense of humor, and it's sort of fun to pick on him sometimes.
He is amazing.
I was invited here to be the eye candy for the show.
And he comes up with great jokes.
What do you mean, Joe?
Oh my God. You know why that's so funny, Rick? Because it's true. Oh no, he didn't say that. That's good stuff, man. No, Rick's actually our what do you call it? I always get that messed up. It's the student
Success manager.
success manager. I always call it like a liaison, but he's our student success manager of Accelerator. So he's closely tied to Accelerator. And you know, I kind of want him to start trying to learn a little bit of Power Apps, but you know, he's been sitting here watching us on the live stream. So you would think through osmosis, he would actually just be able to start writing code, you know, but I don't know.
Hey, I'm a lot closer than when I first started. That's for sure.
Yep. Yeah. That's like saying, you know, you go to the gym. If you want to do 100 push-ups a day, if you start off and you just go out there and you do one push-up, well, you're a lot closer to getting that 100 than you were the day before that, right? So that's good stuff. So basically I'm saying is that if you want to be a Power App developer, you know, coming to the live stream, you're a lot closer to being that than if you didn't.
And so what Rick does, he's the student success manager, but we could almost call it a student advocate. So he keeps in contact with all of our Accelerator students, which is grown over the last year. So the Accelerator students are a smaller, tight-knit group of like a community. But you know, he keeps in contact with people, and if I either need to step up my game or I'm letting something fall through the cracks, you know, he can say, hey, you need to do this for the students. You know, so he's like a student advocate as well. I really like that.
That's why I always get messed up on his title, because I kind of call him the student liaison. You know, he's like the
that sounds more sophisticated than student success manager.
Yeah, well, I mean, both of them are good though, but you know, but he's the connection between us and the students a lot of times, especially if we get so busy working on doing videos or trying to come up with content somehow, doing these live streams and now workshops. And sometimes we're like, or if I'm working so much with one student because of a project they're working on, sometimes I lose connection with some of these other students, you know, and some of the Accelerator students become so successful in the program so quickly, we don't see them as often. So it's kind of cool for him to go out there and reach out and touch base with them, you know? So.
Yeah, we got some awesome students. That's for sure.
Yeah. This Accelerator program has really been working. It's beyond any, Darren and I've talked about this for 20 years. But I knew that the model was good, and I knew that we were going to be able to make students get really good at programming. But I never realized how fast we would be able to get it done and how strong they become. Like I look at some of these people like Jason and Patty that's on the live stream right now. It's amazing what I've seen where you guys started and where you're at now. It's now you guys might be looking at yourselves like I feel like an imposter, but because you do if you kind of look at, because you're never where you want to be, right? When you're developing programs, you're never where you want to be. But if you look at where you started and where you're at right now, look how far you've come. That's amazing to me. And this is about progress. It's never about perfection. It's never about perfection because you're never going to find perfection, but it's about progress and how well are you getting better, So we say that and we're like, some of these people in their program, they say, well, I get power apps and I go through these videos and stuff. And you expect me just to be like this first grader learning calculus, and it's like instantly I should know calculus. But we're not saying that. We're saying no, but if you are 2 or 3 years into this thing and you're still doing 2 + 2, then maybe you need to find a different teacher. And that's kind of what we're trying to be. We're saying, look, man, we want to see you guys progress at a very good pace. And if you're not progressing, then we need to find a different teacher, How's that?
I don't know if you noticed this, Kurt, but I'm just having a rough time with this modern control here, man.
Okay.
You see that we've got 2 2024s?
Yeah.
I don't know where that comes from because this drop down, its data source is a collection. Okay. And it's only got 2 values in it.
Yep. Let's go to the defaults. Let's look at your defaults.
Yeah. And I've tried filter. I've tried lookup. So we do a lookup and default selected items. It's like it's adding an item to it. Like, why would it do that? Weird. Maybe if I say value here. Nope, does not like that.
Okay, you tried comma value, didn't work. Okay.
Yeah. So I tried filter, I tried lookup, still situation. And then what I'm thinking of doing is doing like a blast.
Try this, Darren. I don't know if it's going to work, but try to put year to day function, just without doing the last and all that. Okay, go ahead and do that first.
But I don't want the last. What I want is the current year.
Yeah. So
tell me what you have up your sleeve.
Okay. So just go year to day. Keep that lookup there. Keep that lookup in there, but in front of that lookup, put the year to day function. No, year and the year function and then today function, nested function.
Oh, okay. I was like, man, you're going to teach me something here, man. I don't know that function. All right.
Equals. And then that lookup right there.
Oh.
And then you want the comma, the third parameter of
okay. So do a dot value here.
Dot value. It's not going to work. Okay.
It's expecting a table value. And this equal operator is giving us a Boolean value.
And the reason why, Darren, is because it's default selected items. It's expecting a list of items that have been selected. That's why it wants a table. We don't have a default on this thing, huh?
Oh. In fact, I'm going to go through these because, guys, the modern controls, they're not fully baked. Hey, Joshua. So one of the things I do, if anybody shows their face, I'll bring them on. If you hide your video, I'll take you off. And so if you ever wonder why I bring you on or take you off.
I almost thought that was a Dallas Cowboy sweatshirt there, hoodie you had there, Joshua. I know you're a Cowboy fan. Rick's a Cowboy fan too.
Is he?
I don't watch football.
No, you're a Cowboy fan.
Okay, I'll be a Cowboy fan, but I actually don't watch football.
It's so unfortunate that I'm a Cowboy fan. I just hate the Cowboys, but I just can't help it. They picked me. I didn't pick them. Okay.
I'm a computer nerd. I don't understand you guys with the
You're better off.
watching sports and when I was a kid, like people would ask me, what sports team are you? I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, I need to pick one. Like, should I pick based on the colors or their logo? Do I like their logo? And my wife tells me I'm autistic, so maybe that's why I'm so weird. So what are we doing here, Kurt? So we can't do this equal sign.
I just wanted to try that. It's because the only way you can do this, and you tried it already, is to give it one item for the default value.
And I'm looking at all these properties.
There's something that's bothering me about this anyway, Darren.
Yeah.
And you got a drop down list box, but you're only going to ever have 2 records in that. I almost don't like the tool there.
We could have 10 years.
Okay.
I could have worked for the organization for 10 years.
Okay. I thought you weren't going to do that. Okay. I thought you were just going to put the current year plus. I thought I had said that. You said no or something. Okay. So now we're up. All right. So I'm back to the drop down. Or you can do a combo.
We go and get all the years that are in the allotment. So we get a distinct value out of that.
Yeah.
And we say just one more next year.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm with you now. I actually thought you said you just wanted the current year plus 1. Okay. So good.
So I think I'm going to use the tried and true drop down.
Yeah.
I think that's what we need to do. And I don't have to do distinct because I already did the distinct. I was just trying to get rid of the extra items. And now it just becomes so simple and easy.
So simple and easy. He said that. You guys remember he said that.
Should only take 30 seconds. Yeah. So the default, I know I've got a default property here. And what I'll do is text. And then we'll say the year of today. Okay, that will be the default. And then what I've got in the on select for this, I will go find the on change and put that there. Okay, so we've got that. And then we'll make the width to be 120. Okay. It just looks so much blockier and weird than this one. But these monitor controls are not fully baked yet, and they're sort of weird and
some of it might be we're just not knowing how to use it correctly or yet. Maybe we're not fully baked on it yet either, right?
That's true.
It could be both sides.
Yeah. Well, almost every day.
Seems like a little better.
So Engineer Your Life says, would it be possible to set a call consult with you guys to discuss potential collaboration, YouTube apps? I have a channel I'm building. Absolutely. Yeah. Reach out to us. Our email address will go to me, Kurt, and Rick, is support needs.us. I didn't think of doing this, but guys, if anybody wants to book a call with us, you want to learn more about the accelerator, or you got a channel you like to collaborate, do you see up there straight up on above Rick's head? There's the email address as well. So absolutely, we would love that. Yeah, very cool. Okay, so what I want to do, what I don't like about the classic one is now we've got some weird colors going. At least it's gray, right? We should probably just go along with the gray, but we could tie into that blue color. That styling the drop down should only take like 2 minutes, right, Kurt? But it'll end up being 30 minutes. So I'm gonna copy and paste this. Okay, and what I'll do, it should be much wider, like 300, I think.
Patty says, I think I get a little better almost every day. Some days, not so much, especially the bouncing ball days. Yeah, but your bouncing balls might not have gotten any better, but all the programming that you've been doing around it have probably been getting great. It's probably just making you better everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, now what I want to do.
Yeah, it's kind of like sometimes when we focus on getting a task done and getting better at this one task or doing this one task, we forget that we're actually learning a lot of things on the outside of that task, you know. And that goes along. Somebody had said something about the workshop, last week's workshop or yesterday's workshop, talking about this PTO thing. They said, well, I'm not really interested in doing a PTO, so maybe I just won't even be there, you know. And I'm like, well, you know, the thing of it is there's a lot of coding that goes into doing that PTO that you're probably going to be wanting to learn how to do, you know. And so
yeah, we went into Dataverse. I mean, there were tons of topics that we covered.
Right. So oftentimes the focus of what you want to go and learn is not what you're going to learn. You know, you're going to learn something else that's outside of that. And that's kind of what the bouncing ball was about. It was about trying to learn the concepts around the outside of that bouncing ball. You know.
PTO person, I believe we should have a field out there, a Boolean field, perhaps. we already mentioned that Dataverse doesn't have a Boolean.
We make it when Darren and I say a Boolean field, it just means a text box, a text field that's going to have a Y or an N in it.
Yeah,
that's our Boolean right there.
Yeah. And I want to say is app admin single line of text.
While you're in there, you might as well put is active as well in there too, because you know you're going to need it later.
Well, with Dataverse, there's a status column that has a choice field called active inactive.
Right. So we need to change some form of is active.
Like our own is active.
Like
we could tie into that and update it and use that column for that purpose. Unless you got any reasons that you'd like to share that.
Well, I just don't know what the Dataverse is using that for. They haven't told me what that's for, so I don't know. And maybe
model driven stuff.
Okay. So if our table ever goes into a model driven app, we're in trouble then, maybe, if we do that.
Well,
in other words, we create a table out there and somebody else uses that table for an app, it messes up our data.
Well, if we create our own tables, this PTO person, you know, we got a status and we could update that. I mean, the thing is Dataverse has got different screens. Like you could go look at a form, a model driven form or a view, and it says like is active, you know, but you might need to do some churning or something with it inactive. So you have like a different view and a different screen. Right. I don't think that would hurt anything, but I'm also not a model driven expert. I've done model driven stuff, but I'm very careful to point out what I'm not an expert in. Okay, so I added the field. I'm going to go into the data and I'm going to refresh this PTO people. Okay, so we got that. And this thing will be visible. We'll do a lookup. Boom. On over here, this ad person thing, we've got a lookup right here. So I'll copy that. And I got this drop down here. So I'll do the lookup. And we'll say is app admin. Okay. So now we'll say equals Y. So if it's anything other than a capital Y, they're not an app admin. And then what? Okay. So there's my name. No, so I'm not an app admin. So what I need to do is we should probably put in a default value in there is app admin and give it a capital N. Okay. Now, I think what I will do is use an else block. Actually, I'll cut this out. And I want to make myself an app admin. So I'm going to bring in a new modern button here. And then I'm going to go to the on select and I'll paste this code here. And I'm going to go do I'm going to do Windows, the Windows button, V, not paste. The Windows V will give me my clipboard. And I want to do that lookup.
Do that again. Explain that real quick. You got to, Darren, because there's people watching this that they're going to say this is awesome.
It's a pro move, guys. So a lot of times as you're coding, you're doing a lot of Control C, Control C, Control C, and sometimes you want to paste on something that you had on your clipboard a few times ago. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to do a lookup here. Okay, so I'm gonna hit Windows V, and the first time you do it, it's hey, you want to turn this feature on in Windows? And you're like, yeah. So I'm gonna do a lookup on that.
So
I explain that
go down your
thoroughly?
list. You can keep a history of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I share all my secrets with you guys.
That's a power user tip right there, man.
Absolutely.
And remember, people pay big money for this.
That means it's on the exam. So if I were to give you guys quizzes, that's all right. So I'm going to do a lookup, and then I could take. I've got an error in here. I don't know why, but I do. What's going on here, Kurt? What's
Does it see it? What's it saying?
Oh, I need a record. I provided a third parameter in the lookup that gives me a value and not a record.
Yep.
So I'm going to say Y. Okay.
Good stuff.
So now I hit that button. Oh, there's my drop down. So over here, what I'll do for the items of this drop down, well, I can just click on this. PTO people. And I don't want to use the email. I want to use name. Okay. And we'll make the default, not the current year. We'll use user full name. So it's going to default to our own stuff and to the current year. Now, if that value changes, just like if somebody changes this value, we've got code over here on the on change that calls the click event or the on select event on that button over there. And these buttons will all be hidden eventually. Okay. So what I'm going to do for this on change. Okay. Looks like we're already getting it there. Okay. Because I copied and pasted that drop down. So if I change this to Kurt, boom. Maybe he entered some. Oh, I know what I need to do. So when I get data, it's got in there just the current user. Now what I need to do, I'm going to call this DRP selected user. Okay. Now we'll use this over here when we get the data. And I'm going to go search for user. Okay. And we start at the top. So we're looking at, yeah. So instead of the current user, we're going to use the drop down. Yeah. Go look at that and we'll say dot selected dot intra object ID, which from the database it's called something else. It's called person ID. What is that called? I think it's intra ID. Intra ID. Okay. So we got that. And we'll go down here. And instead of doing that, we'll paste this here. And do we have any more?
How come you didn't tell me I was muted, Darren? I'm just sitting here talking to you. And what are you laughing about up there, Rick?
I'm muted too.
We're professionals here.
Oh yeah, we talked about this yesterday. We have a delegation warning, but we don't care about it
Right.
because we're never going to have anything close to 2,000 or even 500.
That's right.
Okay. So now if I run this, I switch to Curdy Hogan. Okay. Now the bottom one, did you put in two?
Put in
Yeah,
two.
you did.
Sick day and a floating holiday, which I got none. None are allotted to me. You see that -1. You see that, Rick, right? That's how he's treating us. No. Rick says, that's not how he's treating me. Uh-oh, we got measles. We got measles.
What, this drop down? I can delete that.
Okay. And how come we don't have my picture on there? Oh, points off there. Scooter.
Okay. Check this out. I'm going to say paste, not the intra ID, photo. Boom. Photo dot. Let's do full because we got it big.
There it is.
You almost made me fall out of my chair, Kurt. This is like the Power Ups drill sergeant.
Curdy Hogan.
Oh man.
Oh man.
You know what bothers me, Kurt? We don't have 2024 there. And you have two records here, 2024. Why didn't I populate it? We're going to have to do some troubleshooting here.
Yes, we shall.
Or we can ask ChatGPT and it'll say, I don't know.
I don't know.
So it's when we get the years, okay? So let's go look at the first two lines of code. Clear collect. We go do the distinct on the selected person. Okay. And that should give us 2024. It really should. But apparently it's not getting anything. So let's go look at the data for allotments. Go to the tables, go here, and we'll say PTO allotment. Oh, we base that on the allotments. Now, look at the ERD diagram. We want to be getting it from here.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, we need to change it. So that's a little bug there. Okay. So we don't want to look at allotments. What we want to do is look at PTO entries. Okay. Where the person, oh my goodness gracious. Like, what? Stop.
1 of 12 problems.
What?
It says 1 of 12 problems. Jeez.
I don't want. I don't. Okay, so
PTO entries.
intra ID text. What distinct has invalid arguments? Man, there's like so many problems with this thing here. I have a hard time concentrating with all these red squigglies. Okay.
Be nice if you could toggle them on and off.
Now, PTO entry, it is, we do have a person ID. All right, so let's go look at PTO entry. And what we're going to go look at, well, I'm going to try to zoom out a little bit here. And this thing is called PTO entry date. So let's look at that. Would you look at it? Okay, PTO entry date. Oh. But no, it's based on this person ID. And that's definitely in there. Okay. But the allotment year, there's no allotment year. There is PTO entry date. Okay, so now it's happy. So I don't want a full date. I want just the year out of it. So I'm going to do that, Kurt.
Just take the year out of it, right? For the year around it.
Yeah, how are we going to do that?
Don't you have to use string formatting?
Yeah. Let's see here. We'll do. So we get what we're doing is we're getting a list of dates, and what I want to do is. Oh, you know what, Kurt? This you should love this. We add column. You get excited about add columns.
I do. I'm just.
What's wrong? Okay, so column, what we're going to call this is year, and the expression is, as Joshua was saying, is we need to format this thing. Okay, we'll say year. We'll get the year out of that, and then we'll do a distinct.
Right, we're done then, right? How come we couldn't have just put a year around that? I'm sorry. Maybe
Because a year doesn't work with a table of values, which is what we were producing there.
Okay.
I mean, I've never tried to do a table of values. I just assume
table
the
dot
year.
value, right? Would be.
It's a what?
It'd be year of table dot value.
Okay, so what I'll do real quick is I'm going to copy that. Well, it's on my clipboard, right? And let's rip out what I just did here. Boom. Okay, get rid of that extra comma at the end. Okay. So what you want to do is wrap the selected code in a year function. Where do I put the year?
I guess what I'm looking at is that distinctive. You're doing a distinct of the year of PTO entry date, right? Couldn't you just put the year around that?
Okay. Let's see if that works. That would actually be a more simplistic thing if it worked.
That's what I was thinking you were going to do. Of course, it'll probably not work because I won't. Because I said,
Even if that works, that's actually better. So I love this. So I'm going to say get data. Okay.
no go.
We didn't get
I didn't get it.
Okay. So if I go back in there.
Have we looked at the data source to make sure that we've got 2024 in there?
Well, as long as you've entered something, it should be in there. Okay, so I'm gonna do that.
Yeah,
Let's verify that my code worked.
Yeah. Now put Darren. Go to Darren now. Now go back to Darren. Select Darren.
Okay.
Nope.
You know what we should do.
Okay.
Well, why didn't that work?
Well, we're gonna look here. Select or filtering.
We use that columns all the time.
So the filter's not returning anything, perhaps. Have we looked at that? Maybe there's a problem with that.
It links up the person ID with the one that's selected. So if we go look, here's Kurt. So you got the first record and the third record, and you're O3C, and I'm BCC. So we've got good data in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we go over to the person. There's the photos. BCC and O3C.
Okay.
That's good. Okay.
Okay.
So we got that going on. And then, okay.
We're filtering on PTO entries.
So now we don't want to get this in the distinct. What we want to get at is the year.
Yeah.
That we created right there. So let's
Yeah.
see if that works. Wow. Okay.
Can we take the defaults out of there once just to see, make sure? I don't know if it's going to matter.
Where's defaults?
You are in the list box. Get rid of that.
All right. So I'll switch to Darren. And then Kurt.
Ah! This is silly.
This is why people watch our live streams, because they see how we work with this. Now, Joshua, you were saying something about formatting. Did I understand you correctly when I did what I did here, or were you trying to go at it at a different angle?
Well, what I was thinking is that the date time that you pulled that data in because in the column you're going to have a date timestamp, right, for when the data was entered. Don't you need to format out the year from that time? I don't know if it's date time though.
Yeah,
not quite tracking where the data is stored.
One more test before you go down that road. Could you rip out the distinct just one time, block it out?
Okay.
To see if we've got if our filter is, let's just see what we can get in there.
Okay. We should get two 2024s.
Yep. We're not getting anything. Come on.
Okay. If I go look at this call years. Okay. So
one more time. Could you exit the program and come back in?
Yeah. And sometimes
it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. We'd be
that has beat me so many times.
How many times that's the problem?
Let's just get rid of all that craziness first, and then we go down the.
We got nothing in there.
Okay, switch the name though. Switch the name. Go switch the name. No, we got nothing.
But didn't we take the distinct off of the
Yeah,
did.
button?
We did.
we should have duplicates for 2024.
Unless we're not there. We got a bug.
Oh, we've got an error.
We got measles. Yeah, because we needed, like he said, we're not putting anything in there. There be selected dot value. Is that what?
This is where
That's what's going
I'm going to do a coalesce. I need to have a space in there. Otherwise, it's going to mess up my code. Okay. If that is blank, what's the value that we want to put in there? Well, we want year, and we'll say today. The coalesce has invalid. Like I'm in the Twilight Zone. Oh my goodness, we got something down here. Man, the fact that we don't have any data in the drop down list is really hurting us. So why? Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring over a gallery. There's Rick.
You're still here?
I got a wheel wed wagon. Are you still here? That's a quote from
Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
It's over. Go home.
You should have started with the quote from Star Wars with Obi-Wan. Hello there. All right. So I'm going to pull that in, and I'm going to put a classic label in there. Okay. Boom. Here, yeah. Okay. So that little add columns is working. Okay. So this thing that we have here works great. Okay. And if I say I do a lookup on that, we might have to break this down in different buttons so we can properly debug this. Everything is expecting a distinct will give you this value column.
Value field. Yep. Gotta have a value column.
So we need to put that in for everything else to work. Okay. But if I do this, I'm going to copy this code. I want to drop over a new button. So guys, when you're troubleshooting, you're debugging, what you need to do is isolate. So just do one little step, see if you can get one little thing to work. So I'll put that in there. And I'm going to hold down Alt on my keyboard. I'm going to click on that button. Oh my goodness. There's 2024. Okay. Well, now it works. Okay. So we go in here and there's 2024. Now, the second line of code or this block of code, and I check to see if next year is in there. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy that code. And I'm going to put it in here. Boom. Okay. Hold on, Alt, and click on it. And it did its
Hey.
job.
Yay! What'd we do different there, man?
Well, something else downstream of these two lines is messing it up.
Got it.
Let me take out the coalesce because we don't really
Well,
have that problem.
okay, so we're looking at allotments, but we were wanting to look for in entries, right? We're wanting to look at it in entries, not allotments. Right there, you're looking in PTO allotments.
Yeah. But we want to get allotment year. Selected dot. Not value. That's what it should be. What is going on? Yeah, we're looking at allotments here, and we're populating the allotments collection.
Okay.
So we're going to look at the person that's selected in the drop down and where the years match up.
Okay.
So we go look at the year.
I
Like
guess
you're not going to give me any intelligence here. What?
I get confused. That allotments isn't really where we want to look, though, is it? Because we're wanting to go get. We want to go get the. Maybe we do. Okay, never mind. Never mind. I'm getting.
Yeah.
I've been looking at this too many ways.
Yeah, it's the grid. The grid.
Yeah.
The gallery on the top.
Yeah.
That we're working with here. So do we still have? Okay, that was the old drop down, Kurt.
Oh my goodness! Are you serious? Are you serious?
DRP years.
Key.
You should have caught that, Kurt.
I should. That's what you pay me big money for. People pay big money for me to catch stuff like that.
A cup of coffee.
Yeah.
You can recover Kurt from his.
Engineer Your Lives says ChatGPT has been great recently. Whenever I got lazy, copy paste formulas and ask what's wrong, maybe right on point. And then Ben, hey Ben, missing a parenthesis. Yeah, missing a parenthesis, or
I'm missing lunch is what I'm missing right now.
I'm missing that too. Oh man. Okay. So I'm going to do a search and replace.
Look at the key cat, Joshua's key cat. Aw,
Aw.
aw.
Where's
No.
Lucy at? You going to show off Lucy?
Well, she already made her appearance today already. She's gone somewhere now. She came in here, said hi, peed on the floor. You know, it's just fun housebreaking dogs, puppies. It's just amazing, you know. Somebody should have reminded me of that when we got this dog.
Okay, and I can change to Darren. Okay, it's working now, guys.
Well, we're gonna strike that as your fault. That's your fault, Darren.
Well, Kurt, what video should people watch next?
For some reason, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry. Click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video, which you probably don't want.